Now, just to remind us ourselves a few things about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, just the bare facts, and then let's just talk about it, the way you see it, the way you experience it. And those of you that have several Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions that they have gone through in their lives, I would be very interested if you want to share how you experienced the 80s, the 60s, maybe even the 40s. I don't know if we can go back to the 40s as well. But
Yeah.
right, we know that Jupiter and Saturn are connected with social issues and developments out there in the world. They're more political in their nature. They're more to do with how we participate in the community that we're part of. And the greatest distinction that maybe we have to make between the two planets is that, yes, they are kind of a pair, as distinct and opposite they are in meaning to each other. They also form a pair. And they are to do with, at least in my head, to do with what is our place in the world, especially in our country, family, society, community, group, whatever. But that place that has been designated for us, and we didn't have the words. So that these things that have to be taken for granted, our nationality, the name we're known by, the family background, these are all Saturnian boundaries. But within those boundaries, we can also experience our Jupiterian expansion and participation in the world. Jupiter in the chart, to me, is that function through which we choose, out of all of those circumstances around us that are already there, they're already existent, what we would like to pay allegiance to, what we have faith in, what we have like a belief in or sympathy for, of all those ideas that society has already developed. And there is more of a choice with Jupiter and more of a kind of a field for expansion and development in a more personal way. Jupiter is after Mars, and then we've got Saturn. So they mark the boundary, these two, between personal planets and the transpersonal planets. They're neither of the two. There's something of in the middle. And for that reason, they're very interesting because they very directly intervene with our lives. There's nobody lives in a vacuum, isn't it? We cannot disregard the environment, the influences of other people, our upbringing, all those sorts of issues. But at the same time, we're not totally dependent or defined by them. We still have freedom to choose how to operate within these boundaries. So that's Saturn and Jupiter. They're coming together every 20 years, actually 19.6 years to be exact. And most of you probably know that the pattern is very interesting. They come in cycles of about 200 years where they meet in the same elements. And we are just in the end of the cycle of 200 years in Earth. The last conjunction in the year 2000 was in Taurus, wasn't it? And during every 200 years of conjunctions in a particular element, we always have one exception somewhere along the lines. And the exception in the last 200 years was in 1980, 1981, when they conjuncted in Libra. And what's interesting is that this exception always gives us an idea what's coming next. What's the next cycle going to be teamed on? So that Libra conjunction was also indicating then once this 200-year cycle of conjunctions is finished, we are then going to switch to air. And that's what's happening this year on the 21st of December, exactly on the winter solstice. How interesting is that? We have the beginning of air element conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter. And that's going to go on for the next 2 centuries. And not only that, it's 0 degrees Aquarius, the very first degree of that sign. And maybe we can make a connection, if you guys want to comment on that later on, between the age of Aquarius, that arguably has already started, or it's just about to start, and that beginning of a new theme, cycle, adjustment to social life, let's say, in Aquarius. It's very interesting because this happens in the situation that we are in astrologically right now. with many conjunctions in Capricorn that year. We know what they signified and how they're connected with what's going on now. When I think of the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, I expect rebellion. I expect a reaction to what's going on in Capricorn this year. This is just my feeling about it. I kind of feel that during 2020, however difficult we feel that year is, and however many changes we see, we are kind of waiting for something. Yeah, everything is, the waters is still calm, or there is a preparation for something, of more of a movement, more of a reaction later on, which I expect to begin from the moment Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Because every time we know historically that these conjunctions have been connected with a shift in the direction of development of societies and of countries. This is more of a short-term one, not like with the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, that mark the bigger stages of history. But here we are looking for those 20-year variations of at what direction is the world looking at, and what are the moods of society. And it's so typical, it's all so different. I love the book by Stephen Arroyo and Liz Green, New Directions in Astrology. I don't know if you know that one. It's the lectures that they did for a seminar or something like this in 1980, just before the conjunction in Libra. And they were talking about the conjunction in Libra and the conjunctions in general. So there were very interesting things about, in this book, if you want to go to it, about what happened in the different decades, starting from the beginning of the 20th century, the 20s, the 30s, and so on, and how there is something like a pattern of 10 years of, so the conjunction happens, and the first 10 years are like the first half of the lunation cycle, for example. We can imagine it this way. We expect that after the conjunction, there is an extroverted decade where new ideas are tested, experimented with. People are restless, societies are restless to begin in a new direction. And at the same time, it's not very clear what's happening and what the result of what's happening will be until the opposition 10 years later. And after the opposition, usually societies enter a more introverted, reserved time where we start exploring and analyzing what was the idea behind, or what kind of lessons we have learned from the experience of the previous 10 years. And these decades tend to be, Arroyo says, a bit more depressive. So he thinks the 50s, the 70s, the 90s were kind of more depressive decades, while the 40s, 60s, and 80s were more extroverted. That's one way to, just something to think about. What other thing I wanted to mention quickly before we switch to charts, the general speaking about it, is that interestingly, this is actually a 60-year cycle, not a 20-year cycle, if we think about it. Because every 60 years, the conjunctions happen in the same sign. Yeah, that's another pattern about them. That is also there. So I know somebody will probably mention about this speculative connection between the conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter and what happens to US presidents, and how many of them haven't survived. Almost nobody has survived if they were elected in a year that ends in 0. But this is like a proverbial curse that astrologers are talking about. It seems to have ended in the 80s, but we don't know. We are approaching another situation like this when in the United States there will be elections, and somebody elected in that year when we have this conjunction, and that's really, really close to the conjunction as well. So we can talk about this as well if you want. I've got here just one reference for you, which is this website I found with all the dates and the degrees of the zodiac when the conjunctions happened in history. And this list starts very far back in time, you know, even before Christ's era. And you can look at them and see the pattern. You can see how every 60 years we've got the same signs, for example. So here, if I go to current dates, we can see here we've got in 1961 Capricorn, and then in 1900 it was Capricorn again. I hope that's big enough to see. Then 1921 it was in Virgo, and here we've got this variation which happened in 1980. It slipped from Virgo into Libra. Yeah, for the first time. So that was the exception. I think this is a very good reference table if anyone wants to explore that more. And yes, that's it. And another book that I wanted to recommend, if you don't know it already, Alexander Ruperti. You know that author? He is somebody that studied very extensively the works of David Roger. And a lot of what he wrote about is kind of following the same philosophy. And he has one book called Cycles of Becoming. And in that book, he explains many of the cycles between pairs of planets, including the Saturn-Jupiter cycle. And it's a brilliant book. It's one of my favorite books that I always go back to. What I found in this book, which I thought we may also talk about today, if you want, is how this conjunction affects us personally. And not just about global events and politics and what we can expect from that. I'm no specialist in mundane astrology, and maybe you can tell me more about that. But what I think would be interesting for each one of us to explore is in what house of our chart the conjunction happens, as that's going to be important. And also, another thing is to register at what phase of the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter we were born. Whether they make any major aspect. They were making any major aspects when we were born. So some people, like Jean-Marc, were born at the conjunction. Actually, just before the conjunction, isn't it? Or just after?
Just after.
Just after, yes, just after. And there is a big difference between just after and just before, as you know. The meaning of these two phases is extremely almost like opposite to each other, even though the people that have them could have been born just 1 month apart. And it's also interesting to explore what it means if you have a Jupiter-Saturn opposition or square. Is it the first square, the second square? It's kind of showing how much you were meant to, maybe in terms of your destiny, to be involved with public work, with social participation, how much of an important person you were meant to be out there in your influential person, in your social circle, or the opposite. So I think maybe we can find patterns there in our charts. Okay? That's it from me. Now I let you go in any direction you want, if you want to ask questions or just comment on it. Yes, Wendy.
I just wanted to say that I don't think this is something that's going to happen suddenly, because I can already feel it happening. This shift from the shift Capricorn into Aquarius, and I think what's happening is that the patriarchy is dying, and we're going to move into something more democratic and less dependence on leaders, what we call leaders, and we're going to see our leaders in their true light. However, that doesn't mean we're going to get it right as these planets move into Aquarius, but it's going to be, we're going to do more, organize more locally. More responsibility is going to be taken locally. We're going to take more responsibility for ourselves and our communities. I think the so-called leaders are going to be exposed as the people that we've looked up to, and I have to say men. I hope that doesn't sound derogatory, but the people that we have put in power, we're going to see that they don't have any power at all. They have no authority, no power, and that they're actually tyrants.
Wasn't that, Wendy, also what we expected from the Capricorn conjunction to expose, exactly as you said, all those corrupted practices, for example, or abuses of power, or the way big institutions like banks or everything that we're used to look up to, and not just we, but people many, many years back in time, is kind of having obviously a feet of clay, and we're seeing what are the problems. They're getting exposed. Maybe even what's going on now will be a reason for that. After
all our institutions are breaking down.
exactly.
They're redundant. They don't work anymore.
Isn't that more Pluto in Capricorn?
Yes.
I agree with you. And I know that from another level. I'd love for you to speak in astrological terms towards, and the house terms of why you're saying that it's indicated for what you just said.
Well, it's the movement from Capricorn into Aquarius. And so
how does that represent the past, going from male domination to female, or how does that go from to authoritarianism to democracy?
Yes, we could have too much permissiveness. It doesn't mean that we're going to get it right. It's that movement from the ideals of Capricorn to the ideals of Aquarius.
Yes. At the same time, we can see that the conjunction, it's more Capricornian in a way, isn't it? Because Saturn is participating in that. But speculate a little bit on how Saturn can affect Jupiter and how Jupiter can affect Saturn, for example.
Well, Saturn being in its own sign, I would think would be stronger. So it will have more power, if you want to call it that, over the Jupiter. So I think more Capricornian things would sort of come to the surface rather than but I think it will have it'll be a heavier character in the situation.
Yes, and maybe Jupiter will speed up the process because of its ability to expand everything it touches, or to explode everything it touches. But I very much agree with Wendy that this is not going to happen overnight, isn't it? We can't see that from the 21st of December, immediately we're going to adjust towards Aquarius and forget about Capricorn. It will be a much longer process.
It's like a Saturn return. It takes some time and lots of events. And you experience through a 2 or 3 year period sometimes the reckoning of Saturn to your life. And I wrote down that this whole conjunction was a correction to the overexpansion and the need to focus, or assisting organizing, expansion to find structure and create structure that is more relevant. I mean, that Jupiter then can give our Saturn a stronger way to organize. And also that when you said localize, I was thinking the word I had come up with focus. The need, if you expand, you don't focus. So this is an opportunity time to create anew with our focus and thinking about what do we really want.
Yeah, both of them will be under revision. Both Saturn and Jupiter principles will be under revision. So the consumerism of Jupiter, for example, just one thing to mention, or the authoritarianism of Saturn. Both of these we need to look at again through the prism of Aquarius. And Aquarius I won't be able to quote Roger exactly, but he was saying about Aquarius in one place. I think it was in the Post of Life, how Aquarius is the energy that either puts new wine in the old bottles or breaks the bottles to start, a new process completely. So we'll see what is exactly going to happen, but one of the two will probably happen, isn't it? Out there in society.
I think Saturn will make boundaries for Jupiter. So Jupiter won't be allowed to just expand out of control.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, Jupiter may help Saturn actually realize a new vision, because Saturn is about how to make ideas reality, while the place where ideas get born is very Jupiterian, isn't it? The vision for the future.
Or I look at it as Aquarian too, because I think of Aquarian as the inventor, as you want to pioneer something, invent something, and also Aquarian being a more telepathic manner of existence, where you're living in a multidimensional reality of which you see the world more holographic, and you then can create from another plane of existence that's more electric in the telepathic waves of being.
Right. You may be referring, Lauren, to this ability of Aquarius to receive signals, maybe
Yeah.
from cosmos, maybe from somewhere above, let's say, where it even doesn't know how it receives. It's like a radio. I always connect it with a radio signal.
Yeah.
Of waves that then
We have that. We can receive holographically from our, from many dimensions as a human structure. So maybe we will also develop that lightning, Aquarian, inventive. Oh, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
But Saturn will force us to ground that.
And find a form with it. I mean, that's the whole thing. If we look at Aquarian also as a humanitarian sign that is invoking the realization of our unity, and all made up of the same substance with lots of diversity, I would imagine that that would be something that will happen during this time period.
Certainly. What else comes to mind? Uh, for example, if we think about it in this order that we started, Mars, then Jupiter and Saturn, and then Uranus. So Uranus comes after Saturn, as we know. And here we have Aquarius. So the thing that comes to my head as an analogy is like almost like Uranus comes in and says, you two hurry up, come my way, come towards the outer planets, look outside, and then bring those ideas back into social organization.
Yes.
Rather than what it was before, with all those earth signs all the time during the last 2 centuries. It was so much about accumulating wealth, accumulating power, fixating on those things, on the survival, on the physical survival, on continuating, everyday earthly life. We weren't looking to the stars very much. We weren't very Aquarian, weren't we?
And status. It's also been about
Exactly.
status. And if we look at what's happened politically in, at least in this country and in the United States and other places too, I think our culture is based on competitiveness. And that's because there's this urge for wealth, because wealth is power, urge for status, because status is power. And I think we've got to move beyond that. And I think that can happen with this conjunction in Aquarius. I think these two are going to work very well together.
Mm-hmm. We got the same feeling too. And it's interesting how things repeat themselves when we look back in the last several conjunctions. A lot of what's going on now, those search for, having this conversation again about liberties, about living together in society, about power, as you said, Wendy, were also discussed in the 60s when we had a conjunction then, slightly differently, of course, different events. But these themes repeat themselves in those decades.
They repeat themselves, but they don't repeat exactly. They go around in a spiral.
Exactly.
So they evolve. And we couldn't and we didn't ground it enough in the 60s. I think this will be an opportunity to be more grounded and more realistic. And that won't always be easy.
I feel like you have to have lived through it, like maybe most of you have lived through it, in order to ground it. I've noticed that people my age and younger, they have a very hard time grounding anything at the moment, and they not only repeat old mistakes, but they even get further into repeating those mistakes in terms of having unrealistic ideologies, unrealistic expectations, and kind of jumping too quickly forward. That's my feeling personally. I mean, I'm not.
My generation were the hippie generation, and how much more ungrounded could you get? How much more idealistic? And I think we're going to get an opportunity now to really put something into action.
Yes, yes. Other thoughts? Some of you are very quiet. Dwayne, what about?
Just for a change.
I have a little presentation. If
You okay?
Well done.
Yay!
How would you like to do this?
it's what I do. I don't know.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. This will be.
Start ready.
Let's
Ready?
listen to it, and we can continue talking after that. Feel free to share the screen when you're ready.
I will mute myself here.
Oh, yeah.
Why are you muted, Dwayne? I'm asking to unmute you, but no, you still have no sound. I'm not sure what's happening. Maybe you can write me in the chat.
Yeah, he's definitely muted.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I think he knows that he is muted.
He doesn't know why. If he could.
Okay, Dwayne, stop sharing. We'll start again.
Looks lovely, doesn't it?
Yes.
Stop! I want to absorb each thing. What does it say?
No cursor.
There's no cursor.
Oh, that's strange. Okay. So
that's very much. Maybe we can. You could read the slides. We could read them or something for him.
Lauren, if he doesn't have a cursor, he can't move the presentation. So, okay, let's see how we can do that. Dwayne, I'm going to put you back in the waiting room. Don't get offended, please. And then please come back. I just have no better idea of what to do. Okay? Okay. Now, admitting him again.
That was very Mercury and Mars retrograde, wasn't it?
No, I'll cut that. It's easy.
What?
It's easy to cut that later on. So
yeah. But I'm just saying, it's just an experience. We're all just having to keep going through experiences where we attempt things and they don't always work our way. I had each day I woke up and something was wrong that wasn't wrong the day before, and I had to fix it. That was this past week. It was each day. One time it was just 8 a.m. and my chirper of my alarm went off for no reason. It had plenty of battery, but I had to get the ladder. It took about 4 hours to fix, and each day it's something new.
Well, someone is just coming now, a new person.
Well, where is Dwayne? He's not even with us.
No.
I'm waiting for him to reconnect. He's just reconnecting at the moment.
Okay.
Hello, Angie. Can you hear us? Hi, Angie.
Dwayne is back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck's going on with my cursor, but
I had a problem with my computer very similar to yours. Sounds like it.
yeah.
And I discovered it was the video card. So it was just struggling to process all the graphics and everything. It automatically restarted itself a few times. So it may be that, but we can talk about this later.
Right.
Have the same symptoms.
Okay.
Okay, Dwayne, we just had, because somebody just joined us, I wanted to make sure she can hear us. Angie, would you like to just confirm somehow you're with us in the chat or wherever? Never mind, you can join us later if you want. Now, Dwayne is starting his presentation. Dwayne, will listen. Yes, hi. Good.
And
Take your time.
I don't know where my presentation went. Let's see here. Well, this is the most trouble we've had.
What was the degree of the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra?
I don't have it on the top of, but I will share quickly before you share it, Dwayne, because I've got it here in the table. So in Libra, 10th degree.
10 degree.
9:30, so 10th degree.
10 degree, and it was in December 90.
December 80.
80.
Yes.
December 80. I was 19.
What, 20?
19.
19?
I'm from 61.
Yes. But you have a lot of things going on in Libra, so I guess that was important also.
When I was 19, yeah, that was a great year.
Well, I've got your chart ready. So after the presentation of Dwayne, I wanted to look at your chart, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind.
Okay. I stopped sharing. It's your turn now.
Okay. I'm just about there.
Here we are.
Play. All right. I don't know if any of you have heard of Marshall McLuhan or not, but back in the 60s, early 70s, he was an international celebrity. He was a professor and a Canadian professor. And he was, he showed up here the other day in my research, and I just had to share this because I've kept this in mind throughout my life, actually, since first encountering him. There is absolutely no inevitability as long as there is a willingness to contemplate what is happening. And here we are contemplating what is happening and looking for alternatives, I believe. That seems to be the nature of astrologers in general. Now, another fellow from that era, Buckminster Fuller, who actually was born the same year as Rudyard, 1895, We are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. So he coined the phrase anticipatory design science. And I've come to think of astrology in that way, that what we have in our astrological tools are the means to craft vast structures of consciousness that are based in harmony. The music of the spheres. So a quote from Rudyard in his book, Astrological Timing. Astrology is essentially the study of the structuring power of cyclic time over existential events. It is the study of those cycles for the measuring of which the periodical motions of celestial bodies offer us a complex but effectual type of clock. Astrology is a method based on the assumption, generalized from the most obvious facts of human experience, that every existential process has a beginning and an end, and passes in between these two events through a series of recognizable and measurable phases or critical points of transformation. And of course, this notion is grounded in Rudyard's teaching regarding the lunation cycle. The lunation cycle being the basic archetype of all cycles of relationship. This is an image that Rudyard created back in 1950, just a year after I was born. And I came across it the other day, and I suddenly saw his whole work over many years. It came into kind of I came to a contextual understanding of it. And it's like this, we have the zodiac and the sun-centered astrology. And then Rudyard in 1972 brought forth the lunation cycle. And that took us into a much more balanced sun-moon dimension. And there's a whole astrology then based on that harmonious dynamic. And that is what we have in the lunation cycle. And by studying this cycle and its interior structure, we can get a grasp on the unfoldment of cycles of relationship. So in 1975, along came this book by Rudyard, From Humanistic to Transpersonal Astrology. And in the same year, the book, The Sun is Also a Star, the Galactic Dimension of Astrology. So in my journey as a young man getting into Rudyard, I was witnessing him forging this whole new dimension of astrology, this transpersonal dimension. And it has only gotten broader and vaster since that time as people of my age, especially, took on these tools, and we've gone off into our own explorations and pioneering. The lunation cycle is a universally applicable astrological tool, enabling us to examine the fundamental structure inherent in the cycle of relationship, linking any two celestial bodies. The conjunction or new moon portion of such cycles generates a fundamental tone that empowers a predictable process of unfoldment. So the more we can grasp the structural nature of this lunation cycle, the more we can grasp how any particular dyadic relationship is unfolding, such as the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So here we have on December 21st, a conjunction, an exact conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at the first degree of Aquarius. This signals the beginning of an entirely new 20-year cycle linking these two planets. So there are some of the key turning point dates in this in the full cycle that begins on December 21st. So the first quarter in 2024. And then an interesting full moon portion of the cycle, the December, another winter solstice highlighted in 2029. And then to the last quarter, and then the next Jupiter-Saturn cycle will begin in 2040.
Dwayne, sorry to interrupt you, but do you know what signs the squares will be in?
I don't.
We can check that later. No worries.
Yeah. 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 And feel free, anybody, to jump in if you have questions or comments or whatever.
On that last one, Dwayne,
Yes.
my slide, I don't know if it's my computer, but I couldn't see the date for the south, what would be like the south.
Mm-hmm.
It
Me-
was off the screen in my computer. Is it my computer? Was it the slides? I'm not sure, but could you give that out loud? I see October 31st on top, August 19th, 2024, let's call it the West. On the South, what do you have as the date?
December 21st, 2029.
Thank you. That's what I was asking for. Am I the only one who couldn't see that?
No, I can't see that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Maybe you guys are having your controls of Zoom over that area of the screen. That's what I think is happening. The control bar of Zoom probably is covering this part of the screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do I get that to change?
You just grab it and move it somewhere else. But
How can you move that?
Let's see.
you drag it with your mouse, basically. Hold it,
Oh,
drag it.
So some of the themes that we should be considering at the moment with this conjunction, it's in Aquarius. Keynote originality, independence, complexity, mystery, truth, revelation. We've got Jupiter, our expansion, the social sphere, as Redlina has indicated, the individual's participation in it. Saturn, the process of focalization, definition, and limitation. And we've already discussed how these qualities converge at this time. And what we're in right currently, like today, we're in the seed portion of the cycle that began back in 20 years ago. So that's something to consider as well. What is coming to seed and what is ready to be, what is empowering the new cycle? So one way to explore the qualitative dimension of a given cycle of relationship is to examine the Sabian symbol corresponding to its new moon starting point. And realizing that not everybody understands and knows about the Sabian symbols, I've once again pulled an overview statement of that. This is from the Astrology News World website. Symbols integrate the separate experiences of a vast number of men. They take events, and women, of course, they take events from the realm of the fortuitous, the unprecedented, the unique, and the incomprehensible to the realm of universals. 1,000 events or personal situations come to be seen as mere variations on a central theme. The symbol depicts for us this one significant theme. And the theme is part of a coherent sequence of similar challenges, which acquire purpose through their interrelationship. Expressed through symbols, life becomes condensed into relatively few interrelated units of experience. Each unit is a concentrate of the experiences of millions of people. So at the moment we have millions of people and we have some very common themes. And with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the first degree of Aquarius, we're going here to Linda Hill's online Sabian symbol presentation. The Sabian symbol for the degree is an old Adobe mission in California. This symbol shows a safe and comfortable place to live, work, pray, and practice our spiritual lives. The old adobe missions were built with a great deal of effort, sacrifice, commitment, and a sense of community, with one eye on the path and the other on the very real everyday needs of the people it serves. Sometimes we assume our beliefs are right and that others need to be shown the truth. Efforts should be turned to creating infrastructures to pursue these beliefs. Relating is not about control, but acceptance and reverence of each person's divinity. There should be no pretensions, but a forging of links to new worlds, withdrawing, spiritual retreat, natural surroundings, creating civilizations out of natural elements, finding places to work with spirit, sanctuaries and learning, houses, centers. Now she also gives us a caution to pay attention to: dogmatism, pushing one's beliefs and ideas, having all the answers, moving in, taking over, monuments to the past, cults, indoctrination, chiefs, Indians. I'm sure we could go all kinds of places with those keywords. But this whole, I really started to tune into this notion of, you know, are we, say in this group, are we called to initiate and create some kind of Aquarian structure that contributes to the kind of values that were expressed in this reading? You know, the universal spiritual equality, the whole notion of learning and working with nature, creating civilizations out of natural elements. We go next to some of the presentation brought forth by James Burgess on his fantastic Sabian Symbol website. For Aquarius 1, he has a keynote of lasting values. Some aspects of life are more important than others, and we build lasting forms for those that we want to outlive us. Does our own set of values motivate us powerfully enough to create something sufficiently lasting that it outlives us? And in summary, this is a keynote of standing up for our lifestyle, deepens our character, and inspires in us a faith that we belong. So as so much is coming crashing down these days, if we have vision, we need to act on those visions. And if we're looking to bond together, this is an auspicious time, you know, to be in sync with this Jupiter-Saturn cycle, and virtually making a 20-year commitment. If you're really going to engage with the cycle, it implies that you're jumping in at the starting point, you're contributing to the unfoldment of the cycle in a very conscious way. And by relating to the structure of the lunation cycle, you can anticipate the different stages in growth. I'm an Aquarian. I've got Sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, Mars in Aquarius. And I've been exploring and bringing in information from other realms. And one of them has to do with the Mayan calendar. And with an integration of the lunation cycle and the Mayan calendar, the Tzolk'in, which indicates that this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction will occur at the first quarter square of the upcoming lunation cycle, on that the December 21st conjunction occurs within, and that lunation cycle, according to the Tzolk'in, has a keynote quality associated with what's called ebb. within the Mayan Tzolk'in calendar. Eb is the empowered human. Here's some keywords for Eb: harvest, renewal, analysis, abundance, quickening, the open vessel, empowerment, the mind as friend, self-nurturance, getting to the point.
Oh, why am I so tired?
Looking to, oh, other comments?
No, go on.
No, okay. Some shadow issues to bear in mind. Issues of fulfillment, abundance, and insufficiency. Issues of the mind, overvaluing or devaluing the intellect. And suggestions on how to transform that: become self-nurturing by finding what brings you joy and fulfillment. Be willing to not know, to be empty, so that you can be filled by expanded consciousness. Befriend your mind. Use your body as a receptor for higher frequencies. So this is all the fundamental vector here, as far as I can see, is one of ascension. This is an ascension journey. You know, working on ourselves, releasing ourselves from limiting beliefs, aligning with the natural harmony of the universe, and creating from that vantage point. This is a painting by Barbara Nins, a friend of mine, just evoking some of the energetics associated with Eb. And so these are keynote aspects of this upcoming Jupiter-Saturn cycle, according to the view that I've got with the lightning path. Another image for Eb. This is a painting that my wife and I co-created to represent that hieroglyph. It's part of the symbolic language. And there you go.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You mentioned the Sabian symbol for 0 degrees Aquarius. That's so interesting for me, because now I want to move on to Jean-Marc's chart. But before that, I wanted to show you mine quickly, because of what you shared with us. I think this is going to be relevant.
Great.
Just for a couple of minutes, because I didn't realize how relevant that would be to your presentation. Here are the charts I've got for today. Just bear with me. Okay. This is just the way I would urge you to then share your charts with us, and maybe comment the same way that I would mention just a couple of things about mine. That's my chart with the transits of planets on the 21st of December, 2020. And why I believe that would be particularly significant for me, and maybe for our whole group, is because my MC is on 0 degrees Aquarius. And that's where the conjunction is happening. So for me, this is the cusp of the 10th house. And it would be important for you anywhere in the chart. That's where the social participation will be challenged. But for me, it's very literal, the cusp of the 10th house. And you helped me with your presentation so much to think about the meaning of the symbol, how this can play out. So that's one reason. And also, I wanted to register that it's good to bear in mind what aspect we've got, that lunation cycle transitioned into, the meaning of, let's say, this cycle here, Jupiter and Saturn. What phase of that cycle were we born in? And I just use this as an example. Saturn in Sagittarius, Jupiter in Aries. I have them in a trine in my case. You may have them in another configuration. And also, it's not just the trine, but it is the trine before the opposition. So that's something like a gibbous moon phase. So like my Jupiter and my Saturn were in their gibbous phase of relationship at that moment. And this is just the other thing that I think is to be explored. Yeah. Jean-Marc, shall I move on to your one now? So you can comment on that. I've got everybody's chart with the transits on the 21st of December. Ah, here you are. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, am I unmuted?
This is an exact Jupiter return in this case.
Yeah, exact Jupiter return just after the Saturn return.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Here we are. I wanted to make it bigger.
Yeah, but at the same, I'm as well excited about it because there is an exact trine between Jupiter and my moon, which is also my chart ruler, and so I think there is something strong that's going on in here, but I'm very curious to see what it will be. I feel strongly this idea of the building. How to say the old church, or the building, which means the old mission, and building something that's supposed to outlive us, something for the future, something which give a particular form and a structure and something concrete precisely to ideas, to ideals. And yeah, I am in the process of precisely, and encouraged by you in particular, to gather all my writings, to do a book, to give a more concrete form of what I'm doing. So it could mean something really connected with putting all my ideas together and giving more structure. And
if you ask me for astrological advice, this is exactly what I'm gonna say about that.
Yeah, I could guess.
Time for the book. And why a book and not just articles or websites or whatever else? It's just because that gives the form, the ideas a form, and that's it, just in a format that can be left behind in a way.
As well, yes.
It's more tangible way to work with it. Maybe.
Yeah, something, a book. The difference between a book and online resources, precisely, you can touch it. You can, if the internet goes down, you can still have the book.
Yes. Future generations will have the book.
And there is also a much greater, it's not the same impact. It's not the same poetry to read on a computer or even on a Kindle, or having the object. So I think it has a different spirit than this way, and it is on my mind. And
well, practically you already have the book. All you need to do is to put it into the format.
Yeah.
It's not about starting to write a book now.
One thing, even in the skins, I have both the Dane Rudger astrological mandala book, this one, and I have the, let's say, the Sabian symbols here. And what I like about it is that when I'm doing a reading, I can read a lot from a book too, and then just extract it. And like you said, I think we're going to have times where the internet might go down, and I think it's wonderful, the idea of writing a book.
Yeah, so but it's this, and not only this, it's also the fact, for example, I am also in a stage of deepening my understanding, of studying, for example, Rudyard and other authors more in depth. So it's also in the sense of bringing, because when you say a book and a concrete form is giving a concrete form to Jupiter, but it's also, an Aquarius being an air sign, it's also bringing more structure and more discipline and more organization at the mental level, that I can understand it.
I saw you commented some time ago, maybe a few weeks ago, that it was something to do with the Saturn return. That you were saying my Saturn return is now over, and I just wasn't. I don't know, I was on the move somewhere and didn't have the time to comment on that and say, well, I think it's not over yet. The Saturn return seems to not be over yet. It's kind of, it's still ongoing, and it's mixing its influence with the Jupiter return. Obviously, they're together. And
Yeah, and have Pluto on the descendant.
Pluto on the descendant, exactly.
So they're making an exact square to Venus at the same time.
Yes.
And yeah, it's also
And a
happened.
quincunx also to, isn't there a quincunx to your north node, your purpose for this lifetime?
There is an exact quincunx to Uranus. Uranus is also
How
a zero
about to
degree.
the north node? There seems to be here. Oh no, that
The
isn't.
north node is 24, but there is a conjunction. The Uranus in my chart, so the planet of Aquarius, is the ruler of my south node in Aquarius and conjunct the north node. So and it has at a zero. It's also at a 0 degree, so involved in I have an exact trine plus semisextile plus in conjunct with Jupiter. So I expect a very strong, and the Uranian energy, how I can understand also the Uranus ruler of my south node being close to the north node is as if I had in previous lives worked on developing some understanding or some ideas, but maybe in the previous lives, it's a story, I don't think it has to be taken absolutely literally, but something of the spirit of maybe I was too weird or too different or too disconnected. And the North Node in Leo with Uranus being there means I bring all your stuff back and find a way, in spite of maybe the originality or the difference or my antisocial autistic side or whatever, find a way to express it. And then we come to the North Node in Leo and my Sun in the 5th house. And
yes.
So it can certainly be a moment of bringing more discipline and more reality, more concreteness, and also more depth for all what I'm doing. And it's also my 7th house. And I was watching the recording of the solar return, and I have a solar return chart. I'm wondering what's going on because I have it in Libra with an exact conjunction Venus in Libra ascendant and an exact quincunx to Uranus in the 8th in the solar return chart. So it's shown there as well.
So you have a repeated theme in the solar return chart, and this Jupiter coming back to the 7th.
Yeah, and you were commenting on that in the other video to jump from the solar return chart to the transits or progressions and see coming from what could be repeated about different various methods.
So it may be a very intensive time for relationships with people, for communication, for exchange, and getting influenced from many places, and you getting to influence other people with what you do this year. I guess that's what that's all about.
Yeah, because the Pluto on the descendant, it's a huge transformation in my relationship to others.
Right. And it is very personal, this conjunction of Saturn and Uranus in your case, because it's touching something exactly. It's much stronger than anybody that has Aquarius 0 degree somewhere in the chart, but nothing special goes around there. Here, it's not only an angle, but it's also a return and many other things.
Yeah, so
And the fact that Jupiter is trine the moon can't be underlined enough, you know, that's pretty big.
yeah, the moon being also dominant
Yeah.
and chart ruler. So uh, look at me in 2021 to see what it
It
all
meant.
means.
Well, I liked what Dwayne had said,
You
that
see,
I forget his name, about the if we, it reminded me of looking at the particle. When you look at a particle in physics, it, you're looking at it changes where the particle and the way the particle moves, or something of that nature, to the wave, the particle, and when you participate in it. And when his statement, I forget the name, Marshall Mc
the,
something,
McLuhan.
McLuhan
yeah, the
said,
first
by you participating in it, there is no inevitability. You are then creating it by your awareness of it, which goes exactly with the physical wave and particle thing.
yeah. So according to the way I'm going to look at it, I'm going to fucked up completely or to make something out of it.
Yeah, yeah. And from your feeling sense,
Yeah.
your moon is in a Libra. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really feel this is well, it's a very introverted times all this year with the lockdown and all this, but I'm feeling really that I am in a time of deep internal transformation and change, and how I handle my own feelings and emotions, and how I handle whatever is going within me to evolve is something that's an ongoing process, yes. And I feel my understanding as well, that's a little bit expanding. I had a picture that I use to explain Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions, whether in natal or it's slow growth. Slow growth, because I love the box trees. Do you know box trees?
The small ones, the small trees. Is that it?
Or small, they can become big, they can become well, high. When I was in the south of France, there were a lot of box trees in the outdoors. They were not in pots for decoration, and they are with various colors, very beautiful. And outside the house where I lived, there were box trees, but they were maybe 2 meters, between 2 or 3 meters high. So not a hedge that was not huge, obviously, but they were 100-year-old, these box trees, because they grow extremely slowly. But because they grow extremely slowly, it's a wood you can, it's a kind of wood you use when you carve check to play chess, pieces to play chess. You can make very fine sculpture because it's a high quality wood. And that's how I like to represent Jupiter and Saturn together in this kind of wood. It doesn't just look like a shrub, not another tree would be a tall tree, but the quality of the wood is a quality you can.
Is it very dense?
It's extremely dense.
Extremely dense.
You don't believe that it's wood. Sometimes you think, is it really wood? And you feel how heavy a simple stick can be. And you can understand that it's possible, to carve if you want to make chess pieces, very fine sculptures without it to breaking. It's possible. Check the box trees. Yeah.
Jean-Marc, do you think that Saturn in Capricorn at home and Jupiter in Aquarius is pulling in different directions? Like one side of your, say, social life, for example, very conservative, almost sometimes Saturnian with other people, kind of suspicious about other people, or maybe reserved, or maybe more introverted, or whatever Saturnian we can think of.
Yes.
On the other hand, we've got Jupiter that wants to give a handout and participate and be more out there. And I don't know.
Yeah,
Are people in
it's
this
not,
in you?
yeah, it's not incompatible, but yeah, I know I'm a bunch of contradictions because it's my own conjunct Jupiter, natal Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is also square Venus and Mercury.
Mhm.
And so I have two, and Venus is in Libra in her own sign and final dispositor of rather quite a few planets. So it's also a powerful Venus. So it's all in tension. So what you say makes sense. And at the same time, it's possible to have great Jupiterian Aquarius ideals, because these are ideals. And at the level of personal, yeah, the way, yeah, when I meet people, and I have a tendency to be quite suspicious and not trusting, and also very Scorpio, which is not very trusting as well. And so I have this Scorpio Saturn side, and at the same time, yes, the concern for the universality of life, and the idea of universal solidarity as well,
And
which is
built-in contradiction with the Saturn as your descendant and the Cancer as your ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I've been to and fro. That's when I was younger. I think sometimes I was very Cancer, very driven by my emotions, and not structured enough, or not understanding what boundaries meant. And other people have taught me what boundaries meant, and I didn't like the lesson at all. And I had to accept that this was the reality, even if I didn't accept it, and to do with it. So
Is the Cancer Capricorn axis wanting its own boundaries to be kept, especially Cancer ascendant, while Saturn and Capricorn sometimes kind of don't feel other people's boundaries? So maybe it's supposed to be the other way around. Maybe you have a talent of other people's boundaries, kind of knowing where they are, because Saturn is in the third house. And no,
but the thing is, and probably it's a seventh house thing. It's to go from one side to the other, because we live different interactions. I think in my relationships, or sometimes have been in my relationships, or in my attempt at relationships, sometimes have come like a Cancer rising, not very mature and full of needs. And then I met Saturn, which made me understood that coming into relationships with a full bag of needs is not the way it works. But sometimes I have been Saturn, and I have seen people coming with me with their bags full of needs, and I have understood why in this case you do, no, stop it, stay away. So sometimes I was Saturn putting the boundaries, and sometimes I was the Cancer moon coming and saying, but why I don't get it, and learning the
your Saturn is really angular, like very important. I also have Saturn in the seventh, but not angular. And sometimes other people become Saturn. Is that it? Like,
I feel I am becoming Saturn more and more, but yeah, it's my second Saturn return, so it's also normal to be more Saturn approaching 60 than when you're a teenager or in your 20s.
but also, if we concentrate on the Jupiter return for a moment,
Yes.
The Jupiter return is such a good opportunity to begin in a new direction. Something like, for example, like the book or whatever else it may be. Something social participation in a new direction.
Social participation makes me think that sometimes have the idea of, in Buddhism, they say you need to have a sangha, you need to join a sangha, you need to be part of a group. working on personal development or developing my intuitions and meditating, and all this would be maybe strengthened and possibly safer in the context of a community rather than all alone. That's also a possible interpretation of a Jupiter in Aquarius.
And here we are, your Sangha.
Yeah.
0 degrees Aquarius.
Yeah.
Exactly in time. And
About your storytelling too, that storytelling is a way of using the Saturn and also communicating sort of that in an expanded Aquarian way.
Storytelling. Why do you bring the storytelling in with Saturn?
Because it gives form. When you tell a story, it's like you're bringing concrete form to something that's more nebulous. A story leads, usually a story has something to say, a reason to tell the story.
Yeah,
and by taking someone on a journey, you're finding the form to narrow down something at the end of somebody receives a feeling that from the story. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. The story gives a structure and
a structure to something that otherwise is kind of the story is more the Jupiter. It expands, and it expands a way of giving a point that you're making as well. And the Saturn is the story itself, the way you structure a story for people.
It's a way to connect a concrete, understandable realities grounded in experience.
Yeah.
Rather than
yet it somehow gives to others that expansion of what makes a good story is that it expands your heart or uplifts you or inspires you, or there's something about the story. If there's no point to a story, why tell it?
Yeah, of course. It's a question of expanding and understanding.
Yeah.
This Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is on the Jupiter, not on the Saturn. And because Saturn squares Venus-Mercury, which to me in your chart are the tools for the storytelling. And it's almost like, in my mind, it's almost like so far when Saturn was more the active one with the Saturn return and everything else, there was kind of a pressure there. You were telling your stories, but always maybe things weren't expanding enough, or things weren't free enough. There was some sort of tension still there, or preventing you from really being out there properly the way you imagine. Now with the conjunction in December, I feel like you're going to have a wave of support for the Jupiter.
Wow. That would be great. Yeah.
With Jupiter and Sagittarius, it's always an opportunity. It's nothing guaranteed kind of thing. Yeah, when we have a good Jupiter transit, people say, take it, do something with it, ride the wave, but there is no guarantee that it's not going to do anything by itself. It's not going to bring prosperity or wealth or whatever if we don't do anything with it. So, yeah, but it's such a good opportunity. What else? Any other thoughts? Any other questions? Would you like to look at another chart?
I just wanted to add one thing about the Saturn. If we don't own our own Saturn, it gets we find it in other people, and then it gets kind of reflected back at us, and we have to own it.
Are you meaning to say that if we don't discipline ourselves, if we don't learn how to take responsibility and how to put our house in order and all those sorts of things, then we discover obstructions and frustrations from other people or from circumstances?
Yes, that's true.
Yes, I'm being reminded very much about this lesson lately. especially because in my case, as I showed you, it's on the NC, which is more of a Saturnian area of the chart.
Mhm.
It's what I was saying about the end of patriarchy, that if we can't make our own boundaries, or we don't make our own boundaries, we'll meet up with somebody who forces us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Gives us a hard time.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
also, you think that Saturn could be those authority figures that people very often actually accept, and they want somebody to be
Yes.
like the ruler, the dictator, the kind of father out there.
Yes, yes,
Maybe we have to become our own fathers,
yes, or our own parents.
our own parents, exactly.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, we are, and people instinctively, we don't need to feel to meet dictators, or actually it's great when we meet real authority figures who can play the role of authority figures and look at us in the eyes and say, I'm telling you things, and we trust them enough to listen. But if we don't own our Saturn, as you say, it means that people feel that you are not self-contained. And then Saturn means that people keep their distance.
And also they see you as too emotional, which is kind of the reverse of Saturn Cancer. And people fear when, I mean, it's just a reaction. It doesn't need to be the truth of the matter. But I've noticed that the Cancerian reaction, which kind of gives out a message of be my parent, as Wendy said, or be my protector, or be careful with me, don't hurt me, or don't,
Or do it for me.
or do it for me, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the factors that may put people off, for example, because maybe they wouldn't want to take the responsibility of doing that, which is another Saturnian.
The other thing about the Saturn Jupiter is I like to see Saturn as the disciplining, firm but disciplined parent, and Jupiter as the rather more permissive uncle, the warm, kind uncle.
Yeah.
What a beautiful description. Saturn was the father of Jupiter in mythology, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously, Jupiter overthrew Saturn, but then he was overthrown in his own terms later on. And it's interesting to me how Jupiter is the king. Jupiter is the king of the gods. While Saturn, and not the sun. Jupiter is a little bit like a solar figure, isn't it? That's another way of inspirational energy. One that shows the way, one that shows principles, ideas. Very idealistic, could be.
In the tree of life, across what you call the high heart, you have the two Gevura, Gedula, and they're the two, the structure, the almost too much, and the too little. Or when you love with overabundance, that you give everything, can, let's say, spoil the child. Or when you're too strict, and it's like this balance in the heart of finding that balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
It's real important in the middle pillar of the tree of life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I realized he's going to, by the next time we meet, isn't it the 5th? You'll be in a year more around the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I
Yeah.
was born on the 4th.
Or maybe it's Tuesday. I don't know my calendar.
Hmm. You reminded me, Lauren, that I think it was Liz Green that was talking about this. When you have in your chart a pronounced aspect, let's say one of the important aspects of Jupiter and Saturn, you may be struggling materially in a way that it's either one or the other. As you said, it's either too much Saturn or too much Jupiter. But when it's too much Jupiter, you're not given wealth and material possessions and kind of a nice time there, easy time, just automatically. But the other way around, you are too promiscuous.
Yes.
your money. So kind of Jupiter is letting down Saturn rather than having prosperity. Yeah, it's interesting to see how she also says usually Saturn plays devil's advocate to every other planet that it joins hands with. Yeah, so it could go either way, I guess, with Saturn, Jupiter. Yeah, I've never been paying attention enough of what, when, at what age I had Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions as by transit, like this year. And something that Alexander Ruperti is talking about is that it is for every one of us a very important event. And it all depends at what age it catches us. So, say, for example, now I'm 33 and I'm going through the world going through a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And some people have the first one when they're very young. Like my partner was born just 1 month before a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So he went through the first one, only one month old. Shouldn't have had any impact really. But when you are older or in active age, you really have a chance to rethink your participation in the world and make up a new strategy maybe. Adjust yourself. Have you thought about when you went through your first one?
So my first, so when I was 19.
Yes.
When I was 19, I had dropped out of university, but I was not officially, I was not diagnosed, but I was depressed. So I was not, I just dropped out of my first year at university because I just couldn't, I was not able to deal with it. In hindsight, I couldn't focus. And then I started a kind of stage in reinsertion, I would say, something like the state was paying for me to get through a formation to learn a bit of carpentry. But from university, I was suddenly with people who lived in institutions. That it was a very, very different environment. I find out about smoking weed and drinking a lot, and that was really the moment of explosion.
So you had a Jupiter return at the time, but Saturn was in Libra. So was Saturn on the moon or on the Venus Mercury?
It was 8-9, so it was in between.
It was in between the moon and the pair of other two planets.
Yeah, closer to the moon, but it was
right
at good distance from both.
So how would we calculate for each of ourselves when it happened last?
We know that the conjunction happens every 20 years.
So you just
basically remember where you were and at what age you were in 1980, 1960, in 2000. But the most important one is supposed to be the one immediately after you were born. So the next cycle. If somebody was born in the beginning of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, they will have it very young. Well, actually, no, they will have it very old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a 19 because I was born in the conjunction.
Exactly.
1 year after the conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had it, I was 19.
Yes, I read somewhere that I think it was Alexander Ruperti again, that if you were born late in the cycle, you're more affected by the signs of your times. Yeah, you're more mixed up with whatever is going on out in the world, and you are more urged to participate in it, want it or not. But if you were born in the early cycle, you may actually even be the opposite, more of an outcast, more of an independent entity that's not really getting involved that much, or at least appears not to be. Yeah, that's interesting to me. Well,
so many interesting things happening in this chart.
Yeah, thank you.
share your wisdom with us.
And
yes.
I'm just waiting to hear from you.
I'm just I'm just overwhelmed now when I see charts sometimes. There's one part that is the most important part that I really can't figure it out. Like I just don't understand this aspect. And that's the exact quincunx between Uranus and Jupiter. Because when it's literally exact 0 degrees and 0 minutes, this to me indicates like that is the story of your life, is that aspect. But I don't understand what is Uranus, quincunx, Jupiter in those signs. Like it's not coming for me right now. But unless you want to comment on that first, I can say about some other things I see.
Go for it.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
idea was to concentrate around the Jupiter Saturn, but you pointed out something very relevant about connected to Uranus.
Yeah, because it's connected, you know.
Mhm.
And yeah, okay, but I don't know if this is about like interpreting charts, but I can see that this is actually a very important conjunction for you specifically. Because for me, this lifetime is okay. So the Cancer rising obviously gives rise to a person that's going to be very emotionally sensitive and a little bit more reserved and introverted, kind of trying to hide in themselves and in their shell. And then your chart ruler is at 0 Libra, right? So it's a totally new beginning, new cycle of learning how to interact with human beings. And she's on the IC within a few degrees. So this to me is like your private experience is so obsessed with being socially correct and having good friendships and being beautiful and making sure that the way you act is always like socially responsible. And then it's corroborated by the fact that Saturn is at home in Capricorn on top of the DC. To me, this is like, because you're so sensitive, life is just going to throw you all kinds of challenging, cold, austere situations with people in your face. So there's this constant experience of like not being good enough for other people and having difficult, cold, strange experiences. And for me, this is like what you build your life on. It's kind of this isolation and fear of people, because then there's no fire in the chart except for the North Node, which is very interesting as well. And then there's that 5th house where you have a really strong Mars with the sun there as well, which tells me that a lot of this chart is about learning throughout an entire life how to self-express.
Mm-hmm.
And then because it's happening in the 7th house, this conjunction, for me, it's like actually a new cycle of understanding your own relationship to other people, because this cycle is so close to the one you were born with. And more importantly for me, the fact that Saturn and Jupiter are the only planets above the horizon, that signals to me that the only visible part of your life, the only one happening in daytime, like visible for everyone else, is going to be that Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. So it's like your life is an ode to that conjunction that was happening at the time. And then I noticed, you know, like the if we talk about solar arc directions, the time that you would actually exit this phase and start something new is when the Mars solar arc progresses on top of your descendant. So, and I think that's coming up for you soon, right? Like next year, because that will be when you're 60.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's like when you finally, I don't know how to say, like break the cycle and take action and start to be an active participant in your relationship rather than somebody that's passive and always waiting to be accepted. And so it's going to be more of like breaking tradition with needing to be seen and heard and understood and just doing what you want, because you're just, you've had it and you're ready to just do your own thing. I mean, this is just my quick interpretation. And so for me, this conjunction for you was really, I don't know, it's pointing to something larger. It's pointing to something that's been happening for you since the moment you were born, which is this discovery of yourself as a social being that doesn't have to be in isolation.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Very
Touches a few themes.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great interpretation, because are you pointing to something like, so this Aquarius, so Uranian energy Aquarius, South Node in Aquarius, was as awkward as it may have been, because it was too cautious about how it affects other people and relationships, so the Libra and Scorpio stuff. Well, now the idea is to build your own values, you know, self-value, 2nd house, North Node conjunct Uranus, and this Uranus now becomes just comfortable with itself. No, this is my thing, I'm gonna do it, and I don't care who, you know, what others think, for example.
Yeah.
Is it
Wow.
Like he said himself that he was very, when he imagines a past life, that he was too strange for other people, or too off the norm of society to participate.
Yeah, I would say this at the level of ideas, especially.
I'm just trying to open with the solar arc? Yeah, that's exactly it. Mars on the descendant.
I don't see it. How can I?
So that's the solar arc, Mars.
How can I
I
see?
see my screen.
Okay, if you go to the top of your screen, there
Okay.
it
Then
says
yeah.
view options.
So
And you-
Mars, yeah, Mars in solar arc is just on how many?
So
23. So it's in there, and in the solar return chart, it is in the 7th as well.
it's exactly on the descendant, as Emma said. Oh, but this is, oh, sorry, I needed to tell you. This is 21st of December. That's not today. That's on the date of the conjunction.
Yeah.
Can we have transits on top of this? No, we can't. It would be interesting because if we switch on the transits, we can see that, at the same time is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you were saying, Radilina, really resonated with me, because I feel that the significance of this conjunction for you, Jean-Marc, is that you move from the Saturn portion of your experience into the Jupiter.
Yeah.
Like Jupiter just got away when you were born, and you have kind of caught up to him.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. The end of the Saturn rule is marked by your second Saturn return, and now Jupiter takes the stage in Aquarius, 0 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That could be a real transition. Like this example shows me how some Saturn returns are more important in the context of the whole life of the person than
Mhm.
others.
Sure.
Right. So much to think about.
Yeah. So much to experience.
Yeah, I don't use solar arcs that much.
So much.
Relevant. Have you looked at your progressions as well to see if there is anything that affirms all this?
No.
The quick snapshot of transits and progressions combined. So the green ones are the progressions. Mercury.
Yeah.
I think we
Mercury.
spoke about Mercury when we did your chart. We spoke about that Mercury crossing the descendant.
Mhm.
Interesting.
That confirms the theory of creative writing moving forward, for example.
Totally.
How about channeling?
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that Mercury makes an exact, is that an exact square to the natal Mercury?
If it's at 22 or 23.
23 and 24. Or
Yeah.
no, 25. 24.
1 degree difference.
1 degree.
Mhm.
That's something. It's
Mm-hmm.
conjunct Saturn and conjunct Pluto, the transiting Pluto.
But I think going back to the whole picture of the thing, we're talking about what can you leave? What is the enduring legacy for lifetimes after you're left the planet? And having that question for all of us in mind.
But there are two things, because we don't know where we are going as a whole, humanity. You want to leave things behind, but are these things going to survive?
Never
Yeah.
Anything can be lost, anything can disappear. And actually what we do, I'm thinking the most important thing that we contribute is at soul level. The work we do at soul level is somehow imprinted in the memory of the collective soul.
And I believe that in the present moment, we have everything to contribute completely to the world at large, whether we're alone or not, if our intention is for that.
Yeah, yes.
Because that's why I do music so much all by myself in the house, and it doesn't seem like it makes a difference. But on a higher soul level of my understanding, if I really tune in with intention, it does go out. It does affect the world, whether it's known or not known.
Yes. So someone told me a Chinese proverb in this, which says this. He says the person who thinks the right thought at the right moment, he's heard miles away.
When there was a point, that was the intention of the top of the pyramid. I got to be there at the very top of the Giza pyramid, and I was told, I was given what to sing about and everything like that. There was a point on the physical geometry of our planet that where if I did it strong enough, clear enough, I could help magnify that vibration. So, I mean, I'm just saying it's been in many different ways that way we don't have to think, well, if it doesn't make it into a book, it's also the intention of doing it and the process of it that you're making it happen in reality as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're wrong, because that's what the old guy, kind of, when I say the previous life, was doing in the 8th house Aquarius. Well, maybe this time around, despite the fact that tangible things always get destructed at the end and they don't survive, despite of that, you need to look at the 2nd house and create something tangible, build something tangible. Maybe that's why this building at soul level works great for some people. But when we look at your particular chart, I would advise otherwise. I would say, yes.
I'm not advising it. I'm just saying that it helps in the process of doing it before it's out there.
It's so difficult to overcome the South Node, and only for that reason I'm stressing the let's say, criticism on it more than just affirming it, because somebody needs to pull us out, usually people from outside, because every one of us really refuses to solve the South Node, and we always find excuses to go back to it and to go back to it. It's easier, it's more comfortable, but it doesn't get us to the right development of this kind of breaking through. So you're already good in this, doing at the soul level.
At my own personal level, if we're talking about making things, not just living in the mental plane and dreaming but doing things, have done quite a few things, but these things are wind. I mean, I've been on stage, I've performed. I've done storytelling. I've been on the stage telling stories in front of people. I've done a number of things like that. It has been done. I have not just dreamt doing it. And in the process, I have overcome a lot. So it came with a lot of self-development and work on myself, but there is nothing left of the stories I was telling to an audience 20 years ago, apart from the fact that it happened in real life. It's not necessarily an object.
And also the big house is an area of interaction with others, depending on others' feedback or affecting them, or they affect you. It's such a mix, isn't it? Well, the 2nd house wants, I think, the person to learn how to love themselves first and foremost, really value yourself for what you are, and then from there give something out. It's also a Leo experience, but this Leo is now not that concerned about the result. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but
and the other thing is that the Mars being on just coming into it right now, wasn't it the progressed Mars?
The solar arc.
Mars, that would mean action to do something.
And it's somehow resolving maybe a chance to resolve the birth Mars, because the birth Mars is really the one in between, squaring the 2 nodes. That's really struggling with the right expression.
Can you repeat? There was a blip.
I was saying about the Mars, which is squaring. Mars in the natal chart is squaring the 2 nodes.
Yes, yes. It has been difficult. Yeah.
That's, to me, the most difficult part, because it's easy to go out of bounds, isn't it? Is it out of bounds, your Mars? Have you checked?
No, I don't think so.
Take a look. No, it isn't. It isn't. So here it should have been more than 23 in declination if it was to be out of bounds. I was just curious for a second. You don't have any out of bounds planets. You actually, Jean-Marc, you're more normal than you suspect.
I have a comment about the chart about this point about your past being air.
Mm.
But can you go back to the chart?
No, I'm trying. Sorry, just a sec.
You're good.
Here we are.
You know, the thing I noticed first in the fact that the fire is absent, but also in the top left quadrant being empty. For me, your legacy has it's not something public. It's something
I was logged out, and for a few seconds I was completely not there.
You are here now. So yeah, Emo, you can repeat a little bit if you wish back.
Okay. So besides there being no fire in the chart, the top left quadrant is empty. And so what this indicates to me is that the legacy that you're leaving is not so public. It's not something that's in the eyes of others. It's not about accomplishment or achievement. It's something much more personal. And for me, the fact that the North Node is in Leo in the second house, with everything else happening, it's actually more about building a relationship with yourself, and not blending in to what other people expect or want or look for in you. Yeah, for me, this is so much about developing an identity that is yours and yours alone, and not an identity that you hold in order to be meek so that other people will include you in their life. That's just what I see, but maybe it doesn't resonate.
It makes it makes sense.
Thing. You just said it much better. You explained it much better, but that's the same idea exactly. The second house.
Mm-hmm.
The path of individuation.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the Sabian symbol for your North Node, Jean-Marc?
Oh, the camel going through the desert. Yes.
Utter self-reliance.
How little could that be? I mean, that tells it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah, and it's a big thing in my life is precisely that my mother disappeared when I was 1 year old, 1 year and a half. So the camel through the desert, I started in a state of emotional deficit. You know, like if you compare with economics, if you compare emotional life with economics, I was like a third world country because you don't get, when you don't get found, you're trapped in this kind of vicious circle because you have nothing you have nothing or very little to invest. So you can't invest, you can't develop, and you've got to find a way out of it. Yeah, you've got to walk through the desert. The camel through the desert really says it. Because when you are in this situation, also when at the beginning, the relationship with my mother was broken because she died. And then I was at my grandparents, and what we were talking about Jupiter and Saturn, about the boundaries and no boundaries. So I suddenly, they believed I was not realizing was not what was happening. So I was not explained anything about my mother not being there. So I had to deal with it somehow in my own world of a child. And then I was 2 years with my grandparents, and what I have learned about that is my grandmother never said no to me. So then I was in the situation of the spoiled child who can ask whatever he wants and gets it. So I experienced, and then I was with my father and my stepmother, and suddenly, instead of being given whatever I wanted, it was the big wall, no, and the Saturn. So I had to find my balance with this kind of start, which makes sense. It makes sense because now I can say, wow, what lessons have learned. But it was not simple and easy. The Mars square to the nodes, I've read in a book that it attracts violent people in your life. And I think, yeah, when I was a child, I also had the problem both of my stepmother being emotionally violent and of the children outside being bullies and being violent when I was alone. So I was not safe outside and I was not safe inside. So I started with this kind of and when you live through a number of difficult situations as a child, you don't know that it's not normal. And because you don't know that it's not normal, you don't have the understanding that could help dealing with it. So that's a bit of my story. So that's the Saturn Jupiter being the Saturn making all these aspects to make difficulties to overcome. So somehow I feel if there is something strongly Jupiterian happening now, it's somehow I've spent a good deal of my life repairing what I could repair, learning lessons that normally you learn when you are a child if you have a normal emotional development. And it's possible that now I can get to the next level. Would be great and very enjoyable.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Beautiful.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening.
This North Node in the 8th is creating so many situations where you need to put up with the drama of other people, or the drama other people create for you. Maybe the second house is saying, build your own reality. Something.
Yeah. But I think that it's not for nothing that I have this South Node in 8. You know, it's like it's like if my own soul needed this to learn to handle its own boundaries, probably I had other lives where I had not even self-control or whatever. So
You're referring to the Mars square, the South Node, so maybe.
yeah, whatever.
It's interesting how the charts, give us the story from the past as well, and then why we have that chart now in order to work through this. I don't know. This is too much evolutionary astrology, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Now there is something as we are talking charts. When you say it's all well, there is a deep story that happens under the surface and the horizon, my own relationship with myself and building and so on. Okay, but at the same time, when we say what's under the horizon is not supposed to be seen, with my son in the 5th house, I have difficulties to understand it because the 5th house is supposed to self-express, and I've been on stage, I've been a comedian, a storyteller, showing something in front of other people.
But the strongest self-expression I see from you, even though I don't know you that well, is the writing, and this is done in public not in public, but behind closed doors. So maybe the strength of the 5th house doesn't need a public, like literally.
Yeah, but I've done it.
There's something, and then that's something maybe a subject of, a public seeing it, but later in a different channel.
Yeah.
I think the 5th house is only a stage. It could be something else as well, many other things as well.
Well, it goes back to what was said about, that exploration of what is uniquely you, your own identity, and really adhering to that as very strong.
Yeah. Or learning to be spontaneous. Maybe one of the things that is obstructed there is the spontaneity. When you feel spontaneous, fifth house, then the sun is shining.
Mhm.
You know, it's a bit of a misunderstanding thinking about the fifth house sun needing necessarily to be a public performer.
Okay, sorry, the fifth. I don't get the, the sound was wrong again.
Oh, is it my sound that is not very good?
I don't know if it's yours or if it's the system or Zoom.
You sound good, Radha. You both, I can hear both of you.
Maybe just vocally the connection. You're losing the connection maybe from time to time. It
Yeah.
happens.
Since all of your personal planets are in the 4th and 5th house, I hear performance for self.
Performance for self. Yeah, I like that.
There is a connection also with precisely. I've seen my father being a math teacher, very, very, very introverted, very, very embarrassed with other people. And in some way, it's me as a child looking at my father and tackling the issues that I couldn't accept because my father was far too shy and far too not knowing what to do with himself in the presence of other people. So, and that was something I just didn't want to be that, and at the same time being his son, I was like that as well. So it's something I really decided to, it was more important when I was a teenager or a young man to overcome this difficulty precisely to get out of my shell.
Jean-Marc, was the son of your father on the Chiron in your chart? Do I remember well?
My father's son, he's at the end of Leo.
Ah, okay. What was in Pisces? I remember something was going on in Pisces.
He has also Sun conjunct Neptune.
Oh, Sun conjunct Neptune, that team.
Yeah, Sun Leo Neptune on the first degree of Virgo,
Right.
and his south node, his south node is on my Sun, or vice versa, and his Chiron is in Taurus, conjunct his north node and opposing my Sun. So there is really interesting connection between the charts.
Yes.
If we
I mean, even in the fact that the story you're telling us right now, for his son Neptune to be right on your Uranus suggests to me your responsibility to break a pattern that was
yes,
in
exactly.
him.
And yes, yeah, there are patterns, even conscious or unconscious pattern, I think that goes down generations, and it can be also from other families, because I had a stepmother and I inherited also a mentality and an attitude from her. And so I find myself with a number of things which were flowing from a generation to the next. And I remember that when I was a young man, and this my south node Aquarius, I was aware that I was very good at math. And I was aware I had the potential to become this kind of people with a very, very big head, able to solve equations like an Einstein, and not knowing to do anything else, not knowing how to communicate with people, not knowing how to do something with my hands. And, I could have become this kind of hyper specialized mind, able to do mathematics to a very high level and not being able to do anything else. And I remember that I decided to say, no, I want to learn the earth. I want to learn life on earth.
Yes.
So that's was another interpretation of the second house.
Thanks so much for sharing all this. I suggest if you guys want to make a 5-minute break.
Mm-hmm.
Was going to be earlier, but I thought let's do it now if you want.
That'd be
Come back?
great.
Yes?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Are we back, everyone?
Yeah.
Slightly smaller cup. We've got another 40 minutes if we go to normal schedule. So, where would you like to go next with the discussion? You tell me.
We can do another chart.
Yes. Which one? Who wants to volunteer? Or
Mine, unless somebody else wants to.
really, you want to share it? Okay. Okay. I have it, I think.
Would it be fine if I just shared it from here? Because I can do other things with the.
All right.
Whatever.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Well, I can't do that while you are. So you
Oh,
have to.
sorry, I didn't realize I'm still sharing. Okay. Stop that.
Okay.
Where are you located, Em?
I'm in Germany right now.
You were in Italy last week, weren't you?
Yeah. I don't really have a stable home right now. I'm just traveling. Okay. Okay, so then.
Is that
Actually,
solar
okay.
fire?
I have it already. What did you say?
That's solar fire.
This is Astrogold.
Astrogold, okay.
Astrogold.
Wait, let me just switch over to Placidus as well.
Can I ask why you sound so American?
I lived in the USA for 12 years.
There you go.
I was wondering about the good English, so is Bulgarian as good?
Yeah, so the Bulgarian and English is what I got for y'all.
You
Okay.
made a choice to go Placidus. I'm curious why.
Because I understood from our last conversation that we prefer to work with Placidus, and I can do either. It's fine for me.
Well, it doesn't need to be Placidus, but it will be easier if it's not whole sign, if that makes sense. But whatever you like. I mean, if you read your chart with whole sign, go for some whole sign.
Okay, so let's do it that way.
Uh,
Either way, I mean, I can do it either way. It actually doesn't really make a difference. So I like to do it this way because it gives so much honor to the symmetry of the way the system was designed around giving equal voice to the 12 archetypes. But I know it doesn't work exactly like that. Anyway, every perspective works depending on how you interpret. So yeah, like you, Radilina, I have the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction happening within 1 minute of my MC.
Same angles. For those of you that don't know, this is such a coincidence, isn't it?
And you also have the 23-degree ascendant.
All the four angles are exactly to the degree the same. So that would mean Dwayne the same Sabian symbols as well.
Interesting.
So about this, I guess I can give background, or I don't know how you want to do this.
However you want to do it.
Okay. To be honest with you, because I'm so young, the Saturn-Jupiter interaction is still something really foreign to me. It's kind of like these are these master entities that I'm actually just starting to meet right now. So somehow, even when I interpret them and I understand them conceptually, like Jupiter and Saturn both are kind of more nebulous for me in terms of my relationship to them. Whereas the personal planets and the luminaries are really kind of alive, and I feel like I understand them as characters. So to begin with, I can say that maybe this conjunction happening on my midheaven is kind of my own awakening into their influence, I guess, over worldly matters. Because to me, them being the I don't know, what are they called? The great,
Benefics.
Social planets. I don't know.
Great benefics.
well, okay, the point being that they're the ones that lead the cycles of change, right? And we talked about the cycles in the beginning of this. So for me, it's like, okay, in this moment that they're on my midheaven, I'm actually meeting these teachers and they're helping me reach for whatever it is I was born to bring as a message onto the earth. But I don't see a huge, because sometimes something I've been thinking about is these kinds of transits is something that it actually just, I don't know how to say it. Like, for example, my natal chart is a transit chart from one perspective. And so that transit actually plays out in the story of my entire life. And so having this conjunction on top of my midheaven doesn't really tell me that it's something big happening. It's more like something is beginning for me, and then it's going to play out for the rest of my life. Does that make sense?
All the conjunctions are beginning points, aren't they? So we don't really know what this is all about yet.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you were summoned to be more public, more out there, to share your astrology, for example, or whatever else, now? Even though you're young, okay, that's when it happens.
If you could share how the MC Uranus conjunct has manifested in your life.
Can we not see that, Lauren?
No, not coming from him. I can make up my own story, but
because it's the MC, you know how other people see you from a distance. And ever since you Emma joined us, several weeks ago, I see Uranus. That's, I mean, the most I see in you.
In me, Uranus.
Yes.
Okay.
To me, you're a Uranian. Now that in this category in my mind.
Okay, could you define what you see about him? That is, I mean, I'm asking for the words from him or from you. How is it manifested?
Go ahead.
No, you say.
Okay. That's a really great question, Lauren. I can tell you that it's so much, and sometimes I feel uncomfortable speaking about myself because maybe people don't care. So I'm just gonna try to like keep it to the.
I care. I'm asked the question.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, everything about me was always different. Like I just on purpose have to be the rebel every time. The moment somebody says something to me, if it sounds like a command, I'm bound to do the opposite. And so I had a lot of arguments with my teachers, with my professors. I never really got along with authority. It's a long-standing, ongoing, continuous task. So authority is constantly being slapped in my face, and I'm always fighting against them. But not just out of the fact that they're authority. It's just that authority for me is each of us is an authority for ourselves. And there's like a sovereign, free being that we come onto the earth as. And then as kids, we get programmed into these machinic robots, and then everybody expects us to act that way. And for me, there was always this recognition that each of us individually knows what is best for us because we're just having our own experience. And so anyone that is pressuring us or pushing us or telling us what to do or how to act or what to be is just projecting their own unmet expectations of themselves from their own childhood onto us. And then, so there's always this dialectic between being this hyper individualistic free person while at the same time needing to fit in with the natural hierarchy in the world, and also being a child, like a really young person, like almost spitting in the face of generations that have worked patiently and dutifully on something in order for me to afford whatever I have in my life. So this Uranus for me is it's actually kind of well, it's the two faces of everything. It's both really troublesome because there's like no rest from this impulse of like needing to be shocking, needing for things to change around me, to be really like a noticeable person. And at the same time, it's my access to and I think that this is actually because the MC's between Neptune and Uranus, I'm just plugged in. And it's like most of the time when I'm speaking or I'm writing, it's It doesn't feel like it's coming from me.
Mm.
It's just something else. And it's like I'm just downloading information. Huh?
Most likely it's not coming from you. Kind of, you see, in this sense of both Neptune and Uranus receiving messages from, and it's really, you're a very good channel for those messages, rather than being the source of the messages. That makes sense.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, mostly because of this moon opposite Mercury, and then they have this T-square with Pluto, and Pluto has this almost exact sextile to the midheaven. So for me, again, like even if I'm looking at my own chart, which I don't really do, I can see that the heaviest aspects are Pluto MC,
Mm-hmm.
Pluto moon, and then Jupiter nodes.
Yeah, Jupiter nodes. Yeah.
Third nodes, yes.
Jupiter Saturn, Jupiter node.
Hmm. And so it's like these are basically the entities that are most alive in my life. It's this Jupiter North Node, and then it's also this Uranus MC, and then it's Moon, Mercury, Pluto. I can for sure say that's the story of my life. And then if we talk about the actual conjunction, I have so many things I want to say about this, but not on my own chart, just in general.
Go for it.
For it.
Yeah, okay. For this specific transit, I can see that randomly, without me trying or doing anything or exerting effort or desiring, it's just like my career, my public identity, the image I want to create for myself for a broader audience it's just coming by itself. I'm not, it never was even an idea for me that this is something I want to focus on. And so I can see the way that these planets are just playing out of my conscious awareness because they're just, I can't even explain. It's like my life is molding around this conjunction that's happening on my midheaven. And I can feel that every part of my life is kind of like coming from the past, coming from the future, coming from the now. And everything is like somehow supporting this relationship I have with astrology, which is becoming the priority of my life. That's what I would say about this.
You feel like you're summoned, kind of by society, Saturn and Jupiter, for example, to play the role of the MC, whatever MC you have, and you have a very strong MC.
So what did you mean by that?
I mean that maybe those, apart from the rebelliousness of Uranus, which is in its own sign of Aquarius, it's the other side of it is the developed mind, isn't it? The original ideas, this thing of not being scared to propose out, even if you're not very experienced, you kind of feel what the truth is or feel what the idea is, and you very quickly pull it out. So that brainy kind of energy of Uranus is now meant to play a social role. So it's meant to be out there for other people to see it, for other people to tap from it. And what your job is to deliver it. So kind of concentrate on the MC, which for me, the MC is not what the person gets from their social or work or professional, whatever, that much is what they contribute. So the way I see it for myself is it's the same thing, but not that strong, is you need to, I feel like we need to sit down and do something, give out something, contribute.
It's interesting because what's coming up for me now is wherever this is falling in the chart. So for me, it's on the MC. For someone else, it's in the sixth house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all together entering a new cycle that is, air was like what, last in the 1400s? Whatever, it doesn't matter. So wherever this is happening, for example, for me, it's on the MC, right? So I have to now start this air journey together with all of you, and I express it in my public life, like in my career, in the outer world. So whatever tangible legacy I'm leaving, that is tied in with the Saturn Jupiter. Whereas let's say somebody had this happening in their third house. So in that case, it would just be about them living out that energy, this new era, through their immediate environment, in their everyday communications. So their world around them, like the thing, their neighborhood, right? It's just going to become this kind of Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius meeting kind of energy for the rest of their life. This is kind of how I see it. Because I do, go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I was wondering, with that whole thing, mine is hitting on the 12th house, and I'm wondering how that would play out, because it doesn't, it's so hidden, I guess.
Not necessarily, Lauren, because remember last time when we spoke about your chart, and Emma was telling you, and others also, about the concentration of things around the 12th house. So how this 12th house was accentuated from all sorts of different directions. So now you're saying even that conjunction is there.
Yes, isn't it? Because I think my ascendant is 20. My ascendant
birthday,
is
Lauren?
4 degrees Aquarius. So that means 0 is going to be somewhere in the 12th house.
Yes, yes. Well, it
Anyway.
depends where your 12th house starts. Where does the 12th house start? Because it can start into Aquarius. But I think you're right.
Anyway, it just, when he was talking about how it's going to manifest, and for him it manifests at the very top of his chart. So it's a very public thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that the idea of sort of channeling makes a lot of sense, because a lot of the information seems to be otherworldly, or how do you know all this?
How can you process it so quickly? It's usually how people are normally surprised by Aquarians. Like Aquarians' brains work very quickly. They process, they kind of filter things very quickly. It's kind of the higher mind kind of thing, energy. But I was wondering whether this is really to do only with that, or whether there is even more around the sun on the IC or close against all this, because you may be experiencing something, fighting with family, or fighting with roots, or against roots, or I don't know if any of that. Are people supportive? Are people around you, like the close people, are they supportive of your astrology work, for example?
So funny. That's a good one. Yeah, I didn't actually think about it in that way at all. I would say that it's more like, which is probably happening for everyone, it's kind of clear which family members have chosen which side. Now that we're supposed to take sides, but there's people who believe in this kind of stuff and people who don't. And so that has made itself very clear.
That's opposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to reply to Lauren's question because I received information about what it could be. Which is that actually, Lauren, in the 12th house, for me, this is something that gets directly downloaded into your unconscious experience. So it's more of like a shift in your own motivation for existing.
I just noticed something. Is that the Jupiter-Saturn square you have by birth?
Yes.
And it's funny, but I read when I was preparing for today, I think it was Liz Green. She said that Mark Edmund Jones, who brought forward the Sabian symbols, she was quoting him that somebody born with Jupiter-Saturn square has a last chance lifetime.
Last chance?
Last chance lifetime.
Oh, so, great.
Led by Mark Edmund Jones. So I don't know how to interpret that, but
I better get it right.
It's difficult to interpret. I remember Liz Green mentioned that in her book about Saturn. She also,
where I got it from, yeah.
She also says that Jupiter-Saturn squares are, along with Venus-Saturn square, are the most frequent, the highest suicide rates.
The highest what?
Suicide rate.
Suicide.
Because of the you know, the seesaw effect of
Mhm.
when pulling, wanting to expand, the other reacting, refraining,
Yeah.
and it can be very frustrating.
Or fear against wanting to go forwards, something like that.
Yeah.
Or despair against fate.
Hmm.
Do you experience those things like as alien to each other?
Jupiter and Saturn don't make sense to me. I mean, they do conceptually, but in my own experience, I don't really get it. I kind of get Jupiter. Saturn is a little more mystique.
Do you have a spiritual discipline?
Yeah.
How so?
Uh,
Uh,
I was explaining this earlier today. It's like okay, guys, I just feel a little weird about these things because I don't usually say them, but that's okay.
you
Do you
don't have to
understand
say
the
what you
question?
don't want to.
No,
No,
it's
There's only 6 of us or 5 of us on here.
I
So
think
it's
we're six or
private.
something.
Well,
Yeah, I was going to ask you soon about the next topic and let you go and everything, but can I ask you one more thing, Emma?
Yeah.
no,
Who-
but you should
who's
answer
more-
one Scott. Didn't he?
What was that, Laura?
He just got a question, didn't he? From what was the question he just received from Jean-Marc?
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice. I didn't realize we have
The
some.
question of spiritual discipline.
And he was about to answer it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
He was
Okay.
just thinking about it this morning.
Spiritual discipline. I will tell you what that looks like for me right now. I have this understanding that I am just observing from inside of this body. And everything that is happening to me is in a way predetermined. And the only thing that I'm responsible for is observing and accepting and loving, forgiving and moving on. And um, so it's like not judging any part of my experience, regardless of how good or bad I'm acting, actually just experiencing my impulses as they occur without stopping them in any way. And seeing, observing how the body feels, what it's doing, why it's feeling that way, what messages it's sending me, what part of my childhood it reminds me of, and so on and so forth. So my spiritual discipline is a lot about being really loving and kind to myself. But it's not about anything like, you can see I miss all Virgo and Pisces are not happening in my chart. So
What Burgle?
I'm sorry?
Burgle? What do you mean Burgle?
Virgo. I don't have
Virgo.
any Virgo
Virgo.
Pisces.
So because I find your Saturn Jupiter square very interesting because Saturn is conjunct the South Node, so then it's supposed to be very strong. It is in the 12th house, which has connection with Neptune, but Jupiter as well. So the ideas can be something like whether the monks in the monastery or the prisoner in a cell. There is a restriction. There is a restriction in freedom, and restriction in movement. There is something that somehow makes a certain dimension of life impossible because to get the other dimension to expand. That's how I can understand. Or Saturn in the 12th, I always see it as a yogi. So that's a spiritual discipline. Every day I'm doing my exercises, and every day I'm doing my meditation, and really the spiritual discipline to, which can be like you say, this maybe the habit of really observing yourself. It's also very interesting to see Jupiter in the 9th, so it's own house of expansion. You expand knowledge, obviously, but in Capricorn, which is the Saturn sign, and yeah, it could be like Saturn. The, don't say that. Maybe in the North Node in Libra, so it's Venus. Venus asking to relax the discipline, maybe, or Jupiter. No, no, there is something between when too much discipline. You remember the Buddha when he was on his way, and at some point he had the understanding that you know, if you take a bow, if you don't pull the string enough, you can't shoot your arrow. But if you pull too much, you break the bow.
Huh.
And this can be when is it too much, when is it not enough, at the level of when are you too harsh on yourself, when are you not putting enough effort into it. And
I will tell you what I feel in this Saturn South node. And actually, I'll just make it a little more interesting because I take off Chiron because I don't really use him. But he's right there on the North node.
oh yeah,
That's a different story now.
Um,
it adds a yeah.
and what I feel about this configuration is that what I'm really comfortable doing is being the spiritual guru, teacher, leader, whatever, pushing everyone to live their best lives. But what I'm actually not so good at doing is being present with people around me all day, every day, and working for them and serving them.
Mhm.
And I kind of do this thing in isolation because it's comfortable and easy for me, let's say, to work with people online. But then in terms of like being present and available in everyday life for everyone around me, that's tough.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That if there is a challenge in this chart, that would be personal relationships, because you may be in a position of very often being blamed, of being too passive or too non-present or non-engaged or something like this. While at the same time holding the sun in Leo, but that sun in Leo is kind of hiding there in the bottom. So people get disturbed by the kind of, not disturbed, what's the word? They get attracted, maybe, I don't know, by the sun in Leo. But then the sun doesn't do anything. I mean, it's not interested in them as much as they are interested in it. Is that correct to you?
Yeah, sometimes it's just like a lot of attention, and I'm actually I don't feel, I don't know how to say, like I just feel like I'm filling a role. I'm just another human being. But then people give me a lot of feedback, and yeah, I just want to hide somehow. I want to hide, but I really want everyone to see me. Yeah, it's one of these really.
Yeah.
And here is your Virgo Pisces. Virgo Pisces is probably the strongest thing in this chart, because that's the seesaw you are constantly between because of the houses of the nodes. That's what I'm referring to. It seems like you really enjoy Neptune, but you don't enjoy embodying.
Yeah. Yeah, somehow. I find your observation interesting because obviously this Virgo Neptune axis is the one of my path, let's say, and then Virgo and Pisces themselves are empty.
The houses are more important than the signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, somehow.
Maybe.
Of course, in a different way. In a different way. The circumstances of your life will always be the houses, not the signs.
I will tell you something interesting about this, that together with this conjunction that's happening, but I don't know because I'm too young. I don't have any real life experience to base this off of. So, because the strongest aspect in the chart is between this MC and Pluto, I don't know if you guys aspect the angles. I do. And the sextile for me is the aspect of sharing. So they're just helping each other, but in a very active kind of way. They're constantly giving to one another. And so the flow is more like initiated, it's more cardinal. And this thing about the MC and having Uranus here and sharing it with Pluto, I really have this obsession with but it's not an obsession. It's more like a duty to be the most powerful human being on the planet, but then only do that so that I can share everything with everyone, because I'm just tired of these games and these strange reversals and backwards interactions and this hatred. I don't know. It's like, I feel like somebody's got to get the job done and then let everyone else enjoy. But at the same time, it's not my responsibility and I can't inflate myself to that level. So I recognize that that's also somehow to protect myself from feeling like I'm weird and low and unworthy. Anyway, there's just all these like different paradigms that run in my head. And I can feel that what is happening with this conjunction here is the beginning of that story of my life being activated, this one of coming to power. But I don't know what that means. And I also don't mean it in a very like, I want to be a world leader kind of way. It's just the role that I feel I'm serving, and I don't know under what circumstance, if that makes sense.
Chiron is also on Saturn South Node. I know you don't use Chiron very much, but Chiron transiting Chiron.
Yeah, the opposition.
Pushing another button there. And what else? It's so big influence of the outer planets in this chart, I see. That very often results in another reason why the person has a hard time living an ordinary everyday existence and following the rules of what people expect, say your family expects, or whatever, because it's always like in another world in its head.
Yeah.
If you're very young, I think, because I've thought about it for myself also, as a caution, that if you have a very strong presence of the other planets in your chart and you're young, you need to be careful not to become too proud of yourself, kind of thing. I'm not saying you are, it's just like a for the future thing. It's very easy to start believing in yourself because there are reasons for it, but at the same time, this can lead into a lot of I don't know, tricky bits where you are overestimating the importance of that.
Totally.
Yeah, that's the problem of inflation.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to somewhat. Yeah.
And I feel that that's really evident here in the Sun quincunx Jupiter. It's just kind of like they're not compatible, but the Jupiter keeps inflating the Sun. And it is a
I was going to just talk about, I have my moon at the same Sabian symbol at 8 degrees something. Leo is my moon. And so I know the Sabian symbol, and it's the glass blower shaped beautiful vases with their controlled breathing. And I've always thought about as I'm singing a song or creating a song, it's as I'm performing or making the sound from my body, I am also controlling it as it's coming out. And it sort of reminded me of how you explained your beingness, that just as you're observing it as it's coming out. I don't know when you said something like that, but it really struck me because I live that myself, because that's where my moon is. You
guys have a sun moon conjunction. You can be best friends.
Yeah.
Jupiter is actually very strong, Emo. Jupiter is a very, very controlled Jupiter. It's really in its own house. And you are very Saturnian because of the South Node. So Saturn weighs a bit more than Jupiter, isn't it?
How do you mean? Because he's on the South Node?
So if any of the two is to go to an excess of some sort, I feel like this is more likely to be the Saturn.
I think so.
Yes.
Because Jupiter is self-regulating in Capricorn. Kind of it's expressing to Capricorn, so it couldn't really be a real, unbounded Jupiter. It's making all those aspects like the quincunx to the Sun and the other aspects. It's got a T-square with the nodes as well. It's almost like your Jupiter is Saturn cautious. That's how I see it. It's square Saturn. So somehow Saturn may go into an excess. Are you trying too much to order things as well in a Saturn fashion? Kind of being too serious about the mission or too serious about the 12th house experience.
I was.
And not relaxing from it, not letting anything else disturb.
One thing he said that really impressed me is that when he's observing his basis, or what you said, I'll speak directly to you, was forgiving, being loving with yourself, being gentle with yourself. And that as you go forward in your life now, if you see you're being unkind to yourself, you correct that, you observe it.
Yeah, I feel at this point that anything I do is immutable. Like I can do no wrong. Not because because we're just perfect as we are. And I don't want to buy into anymore the fact that I have to be more in order to accept and love myself, or that I have to change, or I have everything that I need every moment that I'm alive.
You're sounding like someone that has been imposed expectations by other people. Because to make such a comment, there needs to have been a question before that of having to justify this. That's the way it sounds in my head. So maybe we are not supposed to be perfect, or we're not supposed to be controlled, presupposes to me that somebody has tried to do that, or somebody has demanded that. Because if you're just feeling like that, you won't even think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm kind of going into the
Jupiter having to do. We never mentioned the Mars in this chart. You see Mars square Saturn, Mars opposite Jupiter.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're all in fall. I will tell you something about I don't know anything about Saturn, Jupiter, guys. If you have any insight on this, I don't know. But I do know about the Saturn, Mars, which means the Jupiter is somehow involved. And that I have been, long story short, when I moved to the US when I was 9 years old, I had a stepfather for 6 years that was extremely verbally and emotionally abusive. And it mostly had to do with food and consumption and eating. And so now I developed this Saturn Mars square relationship with food that I'm working through, which is just like always feeling uncomfortable eating around other people, needing to hide when I'm eating, needing to be alone when I'm eating, feeling anxiety and eating too fast when others are there because I feel like they're watching. And so an emotional eating, every single time I'm triggered into an emotion, I have the need to consume something. So I can see that playing out there. And I can see it playing out with Jupiter as well, like this kind of excessive, overblown, like attention that I give to this fact of my life.
This is, I would suggest discovering more about Chiron. Chiron in the 6th house, conjunct the North Node. In relation to what you just said. And it's not surprising it's in Libra. This whole problem has developed around other people. So other people maybe triggered it, other people keep triggering it. I sympathize a lot with this because of the Taurus ascendant.
Yeah.
There is, even if you don't have all this Chiron in your specific situation, there is always something about not wanting to be rushed, especially when you're eating or when you're doing something like that. That's the natural functions kind of thing. You really hate being rushed. That can stress you out enormously. So maybe a bit of that.
That's spot on. That's totally it. It's about being rushed. I just can't do it.
Yeah, me too. And not just about eating, about anything.
Anything, yeah.
And maybe some of the things that you consider to be Uranus expression, like Uranus not wanting to be told what to do, or to be, as you're doing your thing, somebody comes, knocks on the door and says, please do this for me. And then of course you say, no, leave me alone. But that's not Uranus. That's, I think, the Taurus ascendant being taken out of its comfort zone.
Totally. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
I like to see somebody else is suffering from the same things that I am.
I think we all are. I mean, we're all sick, right?
In different ways.
And we're all perfect. You just said that too.
Exactly. It's amazing.
Because I think that's it, is just to have a certain kind of lovingness towards our current moment of who we are, what we go through, and being part of so many here in the United States, being part of so many scenarios that I couldn't care less about. You know, I don't have any relationship to the whole sports thing.
For example, yeah.
For example. And or there's many ways of not fitting in. Or never feeling like I was from this, you know, I'm not, my mother used to always say to me, I don't know where you're from, but you're not from this planet.
Uranus ascendant.
Yeah. And anyway, so that.
Aquarius, I'm sorry, I was meant to say Aquarius, but you understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
I understood.
I think Jupiter has also to do with this, you know, for example, when you say, I am perfect just as I am, yes and no. Yes and no. I would say we are perfectly acceptable for what we are essentially, you know, but at the same time, we are work in progress. And I hear, because about the question of action, there is something to sort out about. Jupiter means you look at the big picture, so that's your philosophy. What's the philosophy about action? What's your idea about taking action? And you were saying, oh, I just Saturn in Aries and on the South Node saying, oh, I don't have to do anything. I just have to be the witness, and so on. And Mars square Saturn. There is a kind of, maybe it's without thinking that you are not acceptable if you don't do certain things. Maybe you could have a way to look at life, thinking that maybe taking action, your attitude toward Jupiter is, what's my attitude towards this or that, and what could be your attitude toward taking action.
I really like what you said, Jean-Marc, because I think this was spot on about the Mars issue. I think there is a Mars issue in this chart. No, not in a bad way, don't get me wrong. But if this software was set a little bit differently to give you slightly wider orbs for the nodes, we would see a very almost perfect rectangle between Mars, Jupiter, and then the nodes with Saturn and Chiron. And Mars in Cancer usually has a tendency of not wanting to be very out there, isn't it? There is a certain amount of passivity about it. And then the Saturn gives it a reason for it in the 12th.
Yeah.
Jupiter also gives it a reason for it.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because also Mars is holding the South Node in Saturn, but in Scorpio there's nothing. And in the first house there's nothing. And in the 8th house there's Pluto, but if I do it in Placidus, he falls in the 7th, and then there's nothing in the 8th. So for me, there is something about a lack of Mars here.
Why did you say nothing in Scorpio? Okay, descendant is important, but why Scorpio when you speak of Mars and not Aries as a first sign to jump to? Because Mars is connected to Saturn. Saturn is in Aries. So that's one more way for Saturn to restrict the Mars.
Right, that's the first one I said, that Mars holds Saturn and the South Node, but then there's nothing in Scorpio.
Oh, okay.
He's problematic for this fact. Not only is he limited, but the only thing that is in his home is this Saturn South Node combination.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. And then this thing that I didn't even think about, the fact of the Taurus ascendant. I'm just immovable. I don't like to do things unless I'm ready.
But then you're building slowly and surely. That's another side of that. It's not moving. It's just moving slowly.
Are there any aspects to your ascendant? May I ask that? It's none are showing up on this chart, but maybe you have it to one of the asteroids or things like that.
Uh,
Oh, no. Okay. I understand. I wasn't looking at it properly. There it is. Sorry.
I actually just put it in, so you were. You know, I want to answer to both of your, to Jean-Marc and to Radilina, because you're touching on something interesting for me. That's about my motivation for action. And so for me, but this is just right now, and I'm in a period of my life where I'm changing a lot. But I feel that this is really reliable for me at the moment, which is that action is not something to take. Action is something to receive. So I don't really do anything unless I receive an inspiration. And in the moment I get the inspiration, I do it. Otherwise, I just sit and I'm immovable, except in the moments where I'm like, okay, let's get up and do something. So there's never any effort. I don't like to put effort into anything. I don't like to try. There's just this kind of thing of moving into and out of windows of opportunity. And that's the Mars in Cancer. I'm just like water, but I don't really care to, I cannot put myself into places that require me to put in effort or to work or to exert myself. Like it just has to come naturally. I can't move otherwise. It's just not possible.
Maybe we can imagine the story of your past life. Mars square Saturn with the South. I just imagine you being under the wing of somebody, maybe a father, maybe an authority figure, maybe just a comfortable situation where you do your brain work, whatever, or spiritual work, but you don't need to care too much about the physical life. And this builds like a history of passivity there, not because Mars is weak, but because Mars had never been challenged too much. There was no reason for it to be challenged. And now you may be inheriting a similar situation where those windows of opportunity immediately materialize things for you in a good way because of other factors in the chart. And this gives you free time to relax in the rest of the time. I've got something very similar going on my side. Not that extreme, but well, without the Saturn figure part of it, but more in terms of the windows of opportunity. So you have certain talents and they pay off very quickly. So the moment you use them a little bit, they pay off very quickly. Is that right? So that then in the rest of the time, you don't need to struggle that much, which just doesn't make the best of the Mars.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't.
And maybe Mars is the one that needs to solve the North Node Chiron thing.
You know what's so funny? That is just coming to me right now. So obviously I have this very feminine expression, especially with this Mars happening in Cancer. And I don't really have this masculine drive at all. And virtually all of my clients, except for let's say 3 or 4, are women with an overactive masculine drive. So it's like the exact opposite of me. And I can see how much they're teaching me through their own, I don't know how to say, like struggle with fitting the identity of the body they were born into. And it's the same for me. It's like they're learning how to be a woman in a woman's body, and I'm learning how to be a man in a man's body, but we have the opposite polarities. Anyway, that just gave me some insight about. Yeah, this Mars is really, he's not doing much in my life.
Yet it will come a time, I know, by transits when at some point it will be activated, really. But it's even now it is maybe, but I guess later at some point it will be under attack and you have to do something with it.
Can I just say something towards, I used to always feel that I can't rehearse or can't make music unless I feel truly inspired. And like, that's very, and I was wondering if that has to also do with being Aquarian.
I will say this about Aquarius as an archetype, because it's fixed air, it's also, it's kind, there's like there's always a delay. It's something that's a bit more timeless, right? Aquarius isn't really about linear time in this case. So when you're talking about inspiration in Aquarius, for me, what I feel is that energy doesn't move in linear time. And so when you receive a blast of energy, it's just coming on its own. There's really no center around how your being works. And that for me is Aquarius. It's just like space. It's random. It's chaotic. It's infinitely possible. And it's just happening in certain moments. So you wait for these zaps and then you act.
I mean, that has been a long-standing methodology for me, except when I have certain things I have to do, I've had to really force myself to support myself by putting in lots of disciplined rehearsal. But it's not my, it wasn't what I did when I was younger as much. I would be so scared of maybe a performance, I wouldn't put in the discipline. But interesting. I just really related to that of needing an inspiration in order to, like a download of inspiration in order to take action.
Okay, we're already over time a lot. I didn't feel how we got to this point because it was very interesting for me today. I don't know about you.
It was.
And kind of very Piscean experience for the first time. I don't know how to explain it, but time to decide what we're doing next week. Any ideas, suggestions?
Discuss next week.
What would you like to talk about astrologically? Jacqueline?
What about?
Yes. No, go ahead, Emo. I was just trying to challenge Jacqueline a little bit to hear her voice today.
Okay, let's do that.
Oh, is Emo talking?
Yes.
Hi.
I thought we were going to do some of the transit. Well, it's more mundane, I suppose. The transits going back at the Jupiter Saturn. That's what I thought we were going to do today. But and I suppose we did to a point.
No,
but
we didn't even.
into history.
Yes, you're right, Jacqueline. It was meant to be more mundane astrology.
Yeah, it was just to look into the history. Yeah, but
yes, but we just went more into the psychological direction.
Yeah.
Why don't we? I mean, if you want, we can have a continuation and do that next week or whatever.
So here's an idea of looking at that 20-year cycle, each one of us. And
unfortunately, I'm too old and I can't remember back that far. I did have a look, and I can see in the 60s. Well, in 1960, it was affecting me then. Well, I say affecting me. It would have been heading kind of, where was it in the 60s here? It was in my 12th house again, and it's in my 12th house now. But I can't remember back exactly to something specific that would have happened when I was, 10. Nor can I remember back when I was 30. Well, I suppose I can a little bit, but not in any great detail. And also, I have to say that I'm learning a lot from all of you, because we haven't really been into the real psychological astrology, and that's what you're into more than, say, Beryl and I were ever into. So we look at things at times and we say, oh, that transit means this could happen or whatever. So that's why we sit back a bit more and perhaps don't say and join in as much, because I think it's a big learning curve to us, on the psychological side. So it's not that I don't want to say anything, but, if I haven't got something that's of value to contribute, then I'd rather just learn from you lot.
It's more like for the sake of a joke, and I really don't expect you to equally.
No, I understand that, and
that's why it's a free discussion. But I suspect you've got a lot more to share than you think you can.
I'm sure we have. But you seem so deep into, so in depth. Let's put it that way. And Dwayne's. I was going to say them shows. Dwayne's presentations are superb. I've never gone into the part, the part of fortune and things like that, or the what do you call them? The the Sabian symbols, things like that. So it's all new to me. So
I would contribute if I could, but you know, there's things that got, you know. But yes, I think both Beryl and I have got a lot of years of looking at things, but it's more in just, you know, oh, what's going to happen here, or, you know.
This is the most famous way of, you know, widespread way, which I personally am trying to do all we're doing here to counter, not to, you know, I'm not trying to convince anybody to do something else than what they're doing, but like provide an alternative thinking framework.
Yeah.
Because
the most mundane.
Sorry. We used to check out Liz Green stuff, and if I'm truthful, both of us said it was way above our heads. You know, it just so you're actually practically saying things which are making, well, at least me, think deeply, more deeply into the psychology of it. So, you know, as I say, I'm normally not very quiet at all, and nor is Beryl. We're usually chatting all the time. But, you know, there's no point in just wasting time with trivia that's not going to add anything to the conversation.
Okay, so let me just throw this one thing in, is that I believe, you know, as above, so below, all the levels, that there is nothing that you couldn't contribute where somehow my mind wouldn't then take it and see it as having fit into a higher pattern or a larger pattern. So that which is mundane in my world has to be equally, it's sort of, I want to make it all important or all relatable.
And what could be great maybe is if you give us the ideas of what people that are speaking more about events in astrology and what's going to happen and so on, what is being discussed there. So for example, you can say, you know, people very often say on the internet or somewhere that if we have this and this combination of factors, we can get this result, and we can then try to analyze it from our psychological perspective and try to answer why are the people saying that, what's behind this, what can be a downside to this, and kind of transfer those ideas and also put them back into this perspective.
Because Aquarian ideal, we're all holding part of the truth together.
Absolutely. You and I probably more than most, with both Aquarian ascendants, and probably completely off the wall. So there's things I kind of picked up where, there have, particularly when I was younger, I felt out of place. Let's put it that way. I felt an outsider in a lot of ways, you know. And now I'm hearing, you know, like Lauren saying about, I think you said that as well, or at least you give me the impression.
I never felt quite. You know, I barely feel human. You know, I really feel.
I feel human, but I just don't. I used to feel
very multidimensional, and I don't fit in with every. You know, I used to be able in kindergarten to read everybody's mind, and I thought, oh, terrible what people think.
I'd like to be able to do that. It would brighten my life a lot.
Do you notice that this is turning into a very Aquarian group, because almost everybody here has a very strong Uranus in one way or another in the chart. Everybody. Like here now, I don't know about Angie because I don't know her, but all of you, and I consider myself as well having a strong Uranus, have a very strong Uranus. In that way.
Right, so how about do you think that would be a topic? Is to look at the Aquarian and Uranus in our individual charts and how it has outplayed?
Also, we've already done a talk on Uranus.
Okay.
The same topic, but we can slightly change it and still go there. Why don't we keep in the same track? You know, we didn't speak a lot of the fact today that the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is in Aquarius. We didn't go very far in the Aquarian side of things. And also about the social consequences and the personal ones. Do you want to continue the topic? And I can.
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to fit in with anything.
Yes, for example, something like the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in the personal chart or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to do anything because I feel I learn, or at least I get a different handle on so much through this group. So I just enjoy it, and you know, I'm happy, as I say, whatever. I'll go with the consensus of opinion.
Jacqueline, you
Yeah.
said that you and Beryl been doing mundane astrology, correct?
No, not mundane, but we used to just do you know, what the transits were happening, you know, things like that, and you know, on natal charts. You know, so if you have got, you know, Saturn, Pluto going through your 7th house, there's going to be disruption to your relationships, and you know, etc. Things like that. And we've always taken it very much as just a bit of fun. It's never been really, really in depth. You know, we'll pick one thing up and do it, and then flick on to something else. So this is a much more in depth psychological group, and as I say, it's so interesting, and it gets the old mind ticking over and thinking, well, yeah, well, what's that in my chart? So you know, it's we were more playing at it, if you want to call it that. Having said that, we both did the faculties. Well, we went to the certificate and both achieved the certificate, but you know, we were both working full time, and you know, well, it was quite a lot to do to go on and do the diploma. So, you know, we just play with it.
Speaking of, I'm not an astrological program.
Yeah, the Faculty of Astrological Studies in London. This was quite I can't remember how many years ago, but we both sat the certificate, and you know, we've got the certificates but then you need to go on and do the diploma. It's, you know, like, you know, lots of the like Robin Ray and all of the, you know, a lot of the top astrologers have got the faculty's diploma. But we just didn't. We because we were doing full-time, quite committed jobs, we didn't continue and do the diploma, which in a way I wished I had, because the faculty was based a lot on psychological astrology, but we drifted off, if you see what I mean.
Maybe the diploma is not that important at the end of the day. Saying that from the perspective of, I just finished similar thing, but with what is now the continuation of this with the what was the name of Liz Green's school? Center
Liz Green, yeah, she had a school on. No, that was all to do on psychological astrology.
Not doing it anymore, so somebody else has taken over, and now it's another online school. Anyway, but it's exactly the same. And now with the diploma stage of things, you know, my thinking is very Uranian in this respect. We do our own diplomas with the work we do, you know, at home, whatever pace you want to do it. Without having somebody to put a stamp and say, yeah, you're qualified. Astrology is not such a study. It doesn't.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. But what the point I was trying to make was that we did do this a lot of years ago, and we had started off on psychological astrology, but because we didn't have the tenacity to stick to it and nor the time, then we sort of drifted off to bits and pieces of everything. So we never had a full feeling of actually knowing psychological astrology, you know, to say you guys have, you know, so that's why. So I'm honestly not a quiet person. Ask anyway, but you know, you know, if I can't contribute, I'm not going to just.
No, I really don't want to push you to anything. It was just for the sake of like variety.
I know you as well, so you pick up things, and I pick up things too, and I did.
Saying now is equally valuable. I mean, Jacqueline, you don't need to speak about the topic or anything. Now you're sharing something else which other people may be interested in knowing.
Yeah. No, and you know, I will if I feel I have got something to.
Okay, I don't know about this topic. Maybe something else. Let's decide. Yeah,
whatever you want to do, I don't mind. I'll just write it down. I'm happy to do anything.
Dwayne, what do you think?
Yeah, I have an interest in the anaretic degrees. So the
and here we go again. What is that?
final degree of the zodiac of each sign.
The
anaretic.
The last.
Is it just the last?
And the first, I think.
I think it's both the first and the last.
He's looking at
It's the last.
I've been most interested in the last, so that's where
that came up so much today. That came up a lot today.
Where it came up for me was looking at Emo's chart and his moon. Am I correct? The 30th.
No, it was not Mark's chart.
First?
Not a lot of anaretic degrees.
Anaretic degrees. Oh,
So,
so what actually are? What is anaretic degrees? What are?
This is the degree of a zodiac, the degrees of the zodiac that mark the boundaries between the signs.
So it's the 29 or
29
0, 0.
or 0.
Yeah, I have some of those. I didn't know they were called that though.
And actually, the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn is in an
Is
anaretic.
anaretic degree, right? Okay, thank you.
So
Okay.
if I don't have any like that, then I would think I would just look at when the transit happens or something like that.
No, it's just this is most important when you have planets or some points in your chart that are falling in those degrees. If you don't, you don't. I mean, it's not a big deal.
You
But
can stay.
Now I'm deficient.
So you've got to take zinc and vitamins.
guys, this is very strange. Somebody just entering the room.
Oh, do you know what happened?
Hello.
We were on a talk the other night, or well, I was on a talk the other night, just a local sort of thing, but it was on Zoom, and we were, listening to this talk. It was really, really good and everything. And then it was about the US election, and then it went on to another guy talking about something. And the next thing, some person just shouted expletives and whatnot. So we thought, no, we haven't heard that right. We haven't heard that right, so we ignored it. And the next thing, he'd taken over the screen and had on the speakers, his presentation, he'd drawn, well, I won't say what he'd drawn, and then he was shouting what everybody had to just cut off. So obviously he had hacked. Oh, we've got a visitor. We got
I
somebody.
was just gonna say hi, Natasha.
Hi, yeah.
Why are you joining us so late? This is very strange.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We were just about
I just arrived now at home. When did you start this?
3.5 hours ago. 3.5 hours ago, and it's very unusual for us to stay that late.
Yeah.
You called us at the last moment before we were going to say goodbye to everyone. But there will be a recording of this, so you can watch it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and you can join us next time also, if you want. We started, where are you? Where in the world are you? You have a bad connection.
I'm from some. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Where are you?
I'm from Belgrade.
Belgrade.
I was at the gym. Yes, Serbia.
Okay, so next week.
In the middle of nowhere.
No. Next week, if you want to join us,
Yes,
that's
but
at
something
6:30 in the evening time.
Yes. Okay. I can hear you now. When did you started this Zoom?
3.5 hours ago.
Okay. I am late. I'm sorry. I'm late. Always late.
All right. Well, in your place, 6:30 in the evening next Thursday is the next one.
Okay.
Okay, everyone, anaretic degrees for next week. I will not title it like this because it will be like Chinese for many people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll need to figure out another way.
Yeah.
That would be also a reason to continue the topic of today. We can use that conjunction as one of the examples.
Oh, right. Yeah, good idea.
A little bit more about mundane astrology.
Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it very much, and see you next week.
Thank you all. See you next
See
week.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.